Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. A lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And wow, this is going to be really interesting. I'm a bit of a historian. I've written books about South African history, but I've never had the opportunity to speak to a gentleman, a wonderful fellow, Marius about the history of South Africa from a Boer's perspective. And this is very important because we all have our own perspectives on, history. And wisdom comes through experience, either your own or someone else's recorded experience. Therefore, we need to view history as a source of wisdom to base our plans for the future. Without viewing the historical background of any group of people, you will not understand their genetic makeup nor culture, and therefore will not be able to plan properly. So Marius is going to take us on a fascinating historical journey from a Boer perspective. Let me get Marius on. Hi Marius.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
Excellent. I hope you've got you have got your pipe. Good man.
Yeah.
Good man. Now, Marius, I've just given a bit of an introduction to yourself, and what I'd like to do is start off right into the subject because we got a lot to get through tonight. So let's start off by asking, where do the Boers come from?
Scott, yes, there's obviously one would need to put in a little bit of guessing, if I may say it like that. Now, if I look at our ways, then I look back into history and I found the history of Burger, which was a country in the center of Europe, and they formed basically 114 little kingdoms. These people were fighting amongst themselves all the time. Now, the bankers of the time couldn't make deals with these people because they were subsistence farmers. They didn't have a money system. They were not part of the Roman Catholic Church, and this was a problem for basically the let's call it the cartel. And these collaborators talked Germany, France, and Netherlands into attacking these people all at the same time because nobody could win them. Not even the Italians or the Roman Empire. And then from three sides they were attacked, and their kingdoms were split up and allocated to these three countries. Now, if we look at that, then you say here's a king. He's now a balling. What can one call that? He's not more a king, but he's under the rule of somebody else. Let's say German. And at the time, sorry, I just want to sit a little bit back. At the time of the advertisement from the VOC, which was a private company operating the Cape basically as a halfway stop, or if one a halfway stop like a modern day Ultra City on the freeway, and private business, they couldn't attract people to come and farm there, because if you are a farmer in let's say the Netherlands, and your people have farmed this farmland for 10 generations or whatever, how will they convince you to go get eaten by lions and your head bashed in, whatever, so they couldn't get people to come. And therefore they came out with the idea of, you can come here to the Cape Province, there's no government, and you free. But the only thing is, you may only trade to the ships through them. And so if we go into history, we'll find that history is telling us 6,000 Germans came to South Africa, 1,000 Netherlanders and Dutch, and 300 French. But when we look in the archives in Cape Town, we find that these people from Germany write back to their people at home in a kind of Dutch, and then one wonders why aren't we speaking in South Africa German if it were really Germans? So one cannot say this is a fact. This is a studied fact that we descendants from Burgundy. But if one look at our ways, then it is exactly the same as their ways. And if one look at a lot of people say there's no genetic memory in people, which I say is a lie. If you breeding fox terriers, you immediately see this is a lie. The little puppy is born, and the moment he's off his mother, he will bite you. And that is his character, and that is genetically passed on. And humans is the same. If I say to you, what is the traits of Jewish people, you'll say this is the money ox, and if I say, what is the traits of Germans? You will say, German engineering. What are you, a fool? You don't know it. So as every one of the, let's call it the old tribes, have their traits. And we fit in exactly with that. That's the one thing. And the second thing is, if one look at the genetic memory part of it, we see Hendrik Potgieter exit the Cape, and he raised the flag, which we call the Voortrekker vlag. And if you look back in history, you will see that is the combination flag for the Verenigde the united flag of the Burgonians.
Is that the Vierkleur?
You know, so no. That's the Voortrekker flag. It's a blue flag with a red cross, in the middle.
Right.
Which is, and if you use that same flag, and you see a lot of people in the world have used that kind of flag, a color with a red cross, and like the Scottish flag, the Southerners in America. And there's a bit of a theory behind it, which we can discuss at another time. It will take too much time for now. But nevertheless, this was the Voortrekker flag. And later on, the Vierkleur was adopted by the Boers already when they were in the Transvaal. But my point in the genetic memory is either this was just genetic memory from Potgieter, or you have somewhere stashed in a flag like that, which he inherited and then used as his flag. So none of this is, like I said, proven facts. This is my and a number of oaks over the years have joined in with my opinion as where we originated from. And I'm just saying that one need to bear in mind that myself, my surname is Harding. If you look up on the Harding surname, you'll see we're violent people. We conquered the British and we're bad. We said to them, listen, we won't kill you. But if you want to have descendants, bring your wife, otherwise you kill the babies as well. So if a guy says English is actually lying, he's a Viking. And this one mustn't deny facts in history. This is where we come from.
Right.
So this is my heritage, and this is a long way through my great-grandfather, Andries Gottlieb Skumbi. He actually, not him, he's the first Andries Gottlieb Skumbi, or Andreas Gottlieb Skumbi, entering South Africa, actually came directly from Sweden, and he punched his brother through a window, and he thought his brother is dead. He ran to the harbour and say, where's the ship going? They say, South Africa. He said, okay, I'm going, evading
arrest,
prosecution for his brother's assault. He came here. By the time he came here, his brother wrote him a letter and say, listen, Boet, you can come back. I'm okay. And but he stayed here. So he's directly from Scandinavian origin.
Now just before we move on to the Cape, tell me about the fall of Burgundy. Was Burgundy that area that these Protestants held that the money power wanted removed?
Yeah, look, Burgundy was conquered a little bit before the Protestants, because let me put it like this: they had a complete other belief, and that was basically called Arianism. And the first time they have been conquered earlier on in 888. Burgundy was conquered, and at that point in time, the Roman Catholic Church declared, we have established one world order, exactly in that word.
Wow.
And then they became independent again, but they practice a belief they called Arianism. And there's a number of different views on what Arianism actually were. The Germans, especially under Hitler, believed it had something to do with white complexity and blue eyes and all of this. It's not true. Arianism is actually a belief that you state that, if I put it like that, I call the Messiah Emmanuel, but for the sake of people to understand, we call him Jesus Christ, and they believed that Jesus Christ was a descendant of God, like physically his offspring, his genetics, and he only become God, a God after death, and that was the principle of Arianism. And there's a lot of the early developments in Europe which have adopted that as their belief, and only after they've been conquered in the 1400s, they were scattered amongst the Catholics now, under Catholic roots, and I believe they actually laid the foundation for questioning the Roman Catholics, and from there on the Protestant movement actually took some energy and got somewhere, you know. So I personally believe they were part of the Protestant uprising, if one can call it that. So they were for a very limited time under Protestant, under Roman Catholic, but they didn't fit in.
Now, before we carry on, I just want to welcome everybody who's watching this live stream. We're looking at the early history of South Africa right up to today with Marius, and it's from a Boer's perspective, so this is very, very important. Please remember to post your questions into the side chat, and I'm going to ask my moderators to copy them and paste them. Fee, it's lovely to see you here. Fee's actually had some terrible migraines and has been taking a few days break, but it's good to see you back on, Fee. And Rika, regarding Marlena's computer, we've got that all sorted. We're getting a new hard drive put in, so that should be with her by the end of the week, and she should be back fully on board. And we do miss her here actively in the side chat. Now, okay, let's get back to Marius. The early forming of the Cape of Good Hope. Please tell us about that. The attractions, the wealth, and the freedom. What were the big factors that attracted the Boers?
Yes, if I just want to correct you there. If we talk about Boers, the identity as Boers have only developed over the last 150 years,
right, at
max. You know, but. So if we look at the start off at the Cape of Good Hope, or the Cape of Storms, however you want to see it, then one sees the business. They've sent Jan van Riebeeck. He struggled to get farming going, and then came the advertisement into Europe for the free burgers, and this is where a lot of our people come from. At the same time, they needed to govern this people, so they employed people to take management positions, etc. And then came along a guy, Simon van der Stel.
Ah, yes.
And very little people know that Simon van der Stel was a person of color. He was actually the first colored to manage in South Africa, and he basically got his mates, to his cousins and his friends and whatever. He said to them, listen, I'm taking the decisions here, who is buying and selling towards the ships. And in that line, he basically got it that there has been an establishment of crooked people. And they came, he had the view, he would say to a guy in Netherlands, listen, come here to us, and remember, I take the decisions, who is buying and selling to the ships. So I'll give you a better price, and I'll give you a well sought after land. And you will see, if you study that part of history, there was already, at the right of the beginning, when the Vryburgers came here, a struggle between two different societies. The one part came here to be free, and a lot of people want to argue our origins back to Dutch and whatever because of the Dutch language. But the Dutch actually put a very small portion into our modern day makeup genetically.
Right.
The main thing is, like I said earlier, one need to look at people's character. What is their character?
Right.
You know, and then we'll see these people came here for freedom. They were not too much hassled with the trade with the ships. They got along. Obviously, they needed to get stuff which is imported, and therefore they need some currency. And so they did try to sell to the ship some stuff. But there was a definite. You read up on the Cape novels. You see these people with the koets, with the coaches, with the coaches, and they this high society, and then you read at the same time this subsistence farmers which moved further and further away, and these people didn't even mix. They have truly developed two different. Totally different mindsets at the same time, and you know, I would say a little bit onwards when the British arrived with the British settlers, you see the same kind of people like the Vryburgers of British descent came, because Britain was under landlords. Very little people owned their own property. And they were taxed by this landlord, some fair, some unfair, but they didn't own their own piece of land. And they came here for the freedom. And because of the existing Protestant background of the Cape, they basically promote only Protestants to come as settlers.
Now, before we go any further, Marius, I've got a couple of people in the side chat who say that their descendants are Huguenots. And Erica, for example, says, I'm looking forward to hearing about the Huguenots. My father, Landry, side of the family, went to Switzerland and lost all their estates and lands, etc. Can you tell us about the Huguenots and their coming to South Africa? How that all happened?
The Huguenots, I'm not too much of a knowledgeable person on there, because the Huguenots have a very small content into the Vryburgers. You will see that we actually even today refer to a certain bowling style as a Huguenot style, a Dutch Huguenot style type house, which have this very nice gables and plasterwork and that, and they actually became more part of the high society than the Vryburgers. So very little of them. There was a number of Huguenots who enrolled to get here, to have enrolled with the private business, the VOC, and then later took ontslag, resigned, and then called themselves Vryburgers and carried on that basis. But they have a very, very small, from my mother's side, the Rasse, they came from Huguenots and they became Boers, but there's not too big content of our Boers from the French Huguenots.
Now, just on that point with the gables, the houses with the gables, is the Stellenbosch Winery. That's a beautiful building with those little curly. Is that the sort of building you're talking about to the Huguenots?
That is the exact French Dutch building style.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The French brought that yes, it's absolutely beautiful, but they brought that into, that was their part of bringing it into our culture. And if one look at French as a nation, you will see they're exceptionally good cooks, and they're very finicky about their food stuff. And a lot of our modern day culture is what they brought into our community, both the free burgers and and let's call it the Cape Touch, you know,
Right.
the other side of the development in terms of genes.
Now, was Franschhoek, for example, you know that beautiful little town Franschhoek, is that part of the Huguenots that actually settled that area?
Yes, definitely. That I think Franschhoek is most probably the area in South Africa most influenced by the French Huguenots.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I hope that helps. And Fiona, I think, is also Huguenot descendants. Right. Now, let's continue. Okay, so you were talking about how the British arrived because they wanted to escape from, you know, paying these big taxes to landlords and stuff like that. That was in about 1820, wasn't it?
Yes, the development of the eastern side farmers was already quite advanced, and you know, Scott and listeners must understand that my views in life is my understanding of my God, and I see everything which happened is like He is the one who actually made it up. Make it happen. So my view on it is that he needed that content into the Boers, but he needed a couple of generations to breed before he adds that content.
Right.
You know, and we can talk on a different day if there's a need for it about my view on God's breeding program and how he has bred the Boers of today. But so my view is that a lot of, especially Afrikaans speaking people, outright they hate British because of the war in the Anglo Boer War, and then some backdate their hate towards the settlers. But taking into account my own father in this country, Philip Thomas Harding, he came in 1822, and he opened a printing shop, printers, but he was very, let's call it good, excuse my poor English, towards the trackers. And he said to them, listen, carve your name out onto your rifle, because the Cape government said they couldn't take firearms. They expected the trackers to go into Africa with no firearms. Nevertheless, so he said, carve your name out. I'm a British citizen. There's no restriction on rifles with me. And he transported them up to the Orange River, as the Boers was, or the trackers at that stage, we were not Boers yet, was already across the Orange River. He took it up to them, and a British regiment actually tried to stop him and say, we're well aware of you taking the firearms to this trackers. And he said, no, wait a minute, I'm a British citizen. I'm allowed to have any amount of firearms, and you cannot stop me. I haven't committed the offense. And they said to him, listen, if you give these guns to the trackers, we will hang you for treason. So the last couple of nights he lived, he actually sat at the fire with the British regiment, escorting him to the river, and he put the wagons through the Orange River to the Boer side. They collected their guns. The British took him down to Grahamstown, and they hanged him in the open. And his three sons, all of them instantly, first generation, married into tracker blood and became boers instant.
Wow.
And he's not just a isolated incident. If you look at the many thousands and thousands of written down ship passes when they took during the Anglo-Boer War, they took the guys to the islands and stuff. You will see there like 25 Harding names, and it's Afrikaans, modern day Afrikaans names like Kobus and Jan and guys like that. So they and amongst that you will find lots and lots of English surnames which were descendants from the settlers. A good portion of the settlers became boers in the second generation.
Well, I have to tell you a story. I have to tell you a story. Fiona, who's watching here tonight, one of her descendants, must have been a great-great-great-great-grandmother or something like that, actually worked in, I think she worked, or she was part of an English family who were very, wealthy, and they had all the right connections, and they used to have these meetings where they were discussing strategy and da-da-da-da-da, and she used to write notes on a piece of paper in this special, I think it was lemon juice or something like that. When you heated it up, it actually appeared. And she would hide them in a hole during the night. And the Boers would come along and pick up the piece of paper and see what she'd written. And Fee always says that if she had been caught, she would have been hung.
Yes, for sure. Was that before the track, or was that in the Boer War?
This was very early on, long before the foot trekkers. This is way back. I'll ask Fee to tell us the timeline. She's got it. I mean, I just find that fascinating. And there's another thing I'd like to say, and that is that the great naturalist William Burchell, who explored South Africa in the very early 1800s. He traveled all over South Africa, and when he came back and went back to the UK, the British government actually asked him to write the little brochure, which was handed out to British people to encourage them to settle in the Cape. And it's a fascinating document. I've got a copy of the original written by William Burchell. But those were the very, very early days. Now let's get back to we were just starting to talk about the first Boer War. Would you like to share with us the first Boer War and why this is important and what we learned from this?
Yes. If I just take 2 pages back from the actual first Boer War, the first war of independence against Britain, we see a very hidden away piece of information, and that was the first civil war we had. We actually, as Boers, had a civil war, and there was one guy shot, and not much of a war by today's standards. It's actually happening in each house today, and we have called that a war, but we don't call today's slaughtering of thousands wars. But anyway, this war was about, let me put it to you like that. My family from mother's side, the Rassa, came actually up from the Cape slightly before the track. And they got a piece of land here close to Brits, and it's enormous. It's maybe 50,000 hectares or something.
Wow.
And he said, at infinitum, should his descendants be able to live off this little kingdom. And so he stayed there in fear that somebody would actually take this. And because there was a lot of people moving in and out into the inland to come and see how things are and whatever. And then he he sent 2 of his sons back to fetch the rest of the family. But later days, after, you must remember, a number of little republics were formed. And a lot of these oaks, like this Ras, have basically called himself a king. And he said, this is my kingdom. And they didn't have a idea to establish a republic, a democracy. And then came along Andries Pretorius after Blood River, and he made a deal with the British at Sandfontein, accepting the Transvaal's independence. But he didn't have really a mandate from most of the Boers. So he basically came back from the Sandrivier and said, hey, listen boys, I've got the agreement now and you need to come into this agreement. And a lot of people were not happy because they said, listen, we don't want a government. And this is why I say this relates directly back to the way of the Burgundians. They said, we don't want a government. I'm not going to pay taxes to a government. You can forget that. This is my piece of land and nobody will argue with me on that.
Right.
And the little Republic of Leidenburg objected to this. And they said, but we're already a free country. We don't ask the British if we may have a free country. We are a free country at the moment. So there was a lot of conflict in the early days of establishing the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek by means of and then come the question of church. And,
just before we get to that, Marius, Fiona's clarified the situation. She said that her descendant was a spy in the Petticoat Commando, Anglo-Boer War. She was married to the guy she was spying on. she was providing information to the Boers. So there you go. All right, back to you.
I just want to say on that subject, people with history like that should finally record it, because we are not too far away from being an independent nation again. And then we need to tell these tales and make films, and it's going to be like a explosion. And then we need the stories to make to actually embrace our history,
to bring it to life.
So people don't really appreciate what great importance all these little family stories will have into hundreds of generations which will be after us.
Right.
And we as Boers is the worst people to record history. History yesterday is already history today. So we need to record happenings to be able to put it together in generations after us, because they need to learn where our mistakes was and our people's input into our lead up to independence.
Right.
And so everybody should basically keep a little family diary of what their content was in this period in our upcoming history.
Well, I can tell you that Fiona has written a book called The White Zulu. So she's actually got that covered, I believe, in The White Zulu. So that book you can actually buy on Amazon. Okay, let's continue. You said that the first conflict, the religious issue, came into play. What happened there?
Look, the thing there is when the Boers established the what you call it, the Hervormde Kerk, the Dutch Reformed Church,
right,
as state church. Then they then came along the idea to have a Dopperkerk. I don't know actually what you call that in English, but a different church, Protestant church, and then came along the the idea of the Cape Church, which is now the modern day NG Kerk, you know.
Right.
And the early Boers which have contributed and have been part of the Hervormde Kerk didn't want to hear about any other church, because at that time the constitution of the ZAR stated that they can in the Volksraad pass a law, but it needs to have the church stamp. So it was actually the last what you call a government where a church needs to put final approval. It was basically the last one of those. The Russians is now moving towards that, but that's a separate subject. But point is that there was a number of oaks actually against the idea of the republic and how it was put together by certain people, and they felt they were not part, and their church was not fully recognized, and they didn't want other churches. But the point I'm making is this government which was annexed was not fully formed yet. They were in the very, very early stages of establishing government, and one of their biggest problems is a boer wil nie tax betaal. You know, a boer doesn't want to pay tax. That's one of our most important traits, you know. And anybody thinking that you know, you get a lot of guys which is fantasizing on being a Boer leader. I feel very sorry for that, because he's going to work penniless. Boers doesn't pay tax, point. And at this stage of the British annexation, one need to understand that Shepstone come from Natal with 30 people. He walked there and he negotiated the annexation. He didn't come there. And if you read up, you'll see a lot of people actually put flowers on the streets and was very happy for British rule, that there can be a more efficient government, you know. And a part which I always go back and read is Burgers, which was a minister, or what you call it, the Domini, and I don't want to say too much about that specific subject, but he said to Shepstone, listen, will it be okay if I take my tea, because that is my private tea? Which means the president of the ZAR needed to bring his own tea to his office. Now, if that is not a pathetic government, I don't know how to put it. And that is unfortunately because our boers is not easily taxpayers, and that comes from, one needs to understand, if you a king, the only way you will subdue is putting down your kingdom, then you are subject of somebody else. So if you talk to guys which is breeded kings, they're not going to just like that say, okay, I'll give up my own and I fall into somebody else's rule. And that same thing is still with us. It's breeded into us. And anybody who's talking about boers working together, and I've in all my life in Boer politics, I sit in meetings and I hear these people say we must work together and we must be one entity, and I think to myself, you don't know how a Boer is made up. You will never succeed. You know, if you read up on what Maximov stated, the Russian during the Boer War, he couldn't believe that here's a regiment and the general have a meeting, like a democratic meeting. He explained to his subordinates what is his plans, and they say, no, we don't agree. And here's a 16-year-old lighty standing up and say, General, I think we should do this and this, and and the Oaks is employing him and say, that is what we're going to do. And this Oak, coming from a Russian army, he's used to, if the general say march into the sea, and the whole regiment is going to march into the sea and drown. And if one take his perspective on how outsider viewed the Boers then, and you see where our history comes from and where we today, we're exactly the same people. We bred like that. As a fox terrier have his traits of being a little aggressive dog, and that is through the genes. We have that same genes in us as where we come from 500 years ago. So we always need to take that into account, and we can come back later to this trait, because this makes us a very special and very, very extremely strong nation, and somebody you don't want to get into a war type situation with. But I'll cover that later. Yeah. I just want to be at the first Boer War. With the annexation there, Paul Kruger himself.
Tell us about the Kruger era.
Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah. With the annexation, Kruger said to Shepstone, listen, will I get a raise? I'm a government official, but I get too little pay. Will I get a raise? And Shepstone said, yes, we'll give you a raise. He said, okay, fine, then you can annex. So one need to understand that it was a welcome annexation. And after the annexation, and here comes the party trick, is when the British start to enforce their laws on Boers, the Boers only then start to say, oh, we don't want this. And it was a build-up, and the English was well organized, and they wanted to enforce their taxes on the Boers, and that is, and I would say if they had a softer approach, we would have been a British colony, but they dealt with Oaks, who was not easy, and in the end of the day, the wagon, the Bezuidenhout Savar, which they actually took, and that put the spark into the rebellion and then the War of Independence. And if one look at that, you'll see that at the Paardekraal gathering, where the Boers again made a vow to God, they firstly, and Paul Kruger was the one who actually explained it at that meeting, saying, we did not yet do what we promised at Blood River, and we need to do that. And then they made a new pact that they will put the stones there and every year gather at that point. And they started the War of Independence. And if one look at it in world terms, you know, if you look into the let's call it the what was happening in the world at that stage is Britain was by far the biggest power. It's like America now, and a little country like, let's say, Austria or something, but just a minute country against them. So you know, that winning of that war was of great importance in terms of world history, and that happened through whether people want to believe it or not, but that was God's will. He basically allowed this to happen because the Boers didn't act on the Blood River vow, and then he brought amongst them the English problem. Nevertheless, I just want to state at this stage that people need to be very careful, because we as Boer very easily hate British people or even English speaking people due to this British happenings in our history.
Right.
But at the same time, I must say, if you were a soldier in Angola and you shot a person there, you didn't shoot that person because you wanted to shoot him. You were a soldier carrying out your duty. And that is the pity, because the people behind the rulers, which is pulling the strings, they the people who actually should be hated, not the people who's the visible enemy. Nevertheless, the importance of that is that after this war, a freedom pact was made with Britain. First the Pretoria Convention and then the London Convention. But the main importance in that is allowing a freedom of religion. And to me, that is completely out of bounds. You cannot make to God and say, God, please help us win this enemy. And he gave you the winning. And then you thank him by allowing other gods to be worshipped on the land which he gave you now. That's really the tipping point in our history have happened there. Not as a lot of people think in 1902. It actually happened immediately after the First War of Independence, because remember, we were not then a fully sovereign state. We were more a self-governing colony.
Right.
Because we didn't have the right to appoint our own diplomats, etc., into the rest of the world. We needed to have permission from the crown to be able to appoint diplomats or any international thing. And that is also the reason, if one read the book Russia and the Boer War, then you see the Tsar Nicholas wanted to intervene here, and he couldn't, because there was an agreement between a number of them, Germany, France, Britain, and Russia, and I think one or two more, that they will not intervene in household problems inside their different households. So the British said to Nicholas, listen, you cannot intervene here, because this is only a self-governing colony. And that's why I also, in today's politics, is very wary of people which is talking about self-determination, because that is like parole for a prisoner. It comes with a bigger authority over you, which have a final say. It's a different thing than having a sovereignty, or excuse my poor English, but it's a totally different thing, self-governance and a sovereign state, and we must absolutely never accept self-governance of any kind.
Right.
Nevertheless, we have passed the point of what the importance is on the First War of Independence, because we have won the war in the field, and we lost that same war in the compilation of the peace agreement. And that is a thing, I spent many hours researching treaties. In my view, somewhere along the line, us as Boers is going to end up making treaties again with other people. And we need to actually be very strict on how we allow our leaders to what mandate we give them to get our independence or make peace treaties, because that specific the London Convention, if you read that, you would call it the Boers have lost this war. But yeah,
let's move on to
the interim time then. we need to accept that after that first war of independence came the gold rush and that, and there comes the problem in our in our split up, same language, same race people, but different people. Because then from the Cape and from the entire world comes running people. If you read at here, close to Lichtenburg is a small little town, which had at the time like 100,000 people. They say people pushed wheelbarrows from Cape Town there in a gold run, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people came into the republics, which only came for financial benefit. And this is again where up to the 94 elections, we all the time have the problem in terms of what is those people contributing to our, what do they came here for? They came for money, earthly things, and when times is tough, they don't want to endure anything. They run off to the next country which offer them a good living. And that's no boers. This is not Boer-like. If there was, I always say, if there was a single square inch on this planet which wasn't conquered yet, our Boers would have been there, to search for independence. In terms of influences working up to the Anglo-Boer War, this was the money and the wealth of the land.
Well, that hasn't changed, has it? I mean, if you look at the Oppenheimers and Ruperts today, and we'll get to that a bit later, but they have a huge impact on what's happening right now in South Africa.
Yes, and if I can say on the Anglo-Boer War, was most probably the most important happening in our history, although it's very sad, and out of my own family, lots of people have died there, and in various parts of the war. And if you talk Anglo-Boer War, concentration camps, it's a unique thing. But if you look at in 1981, the Jewish people had this thing which they call the Jameson Day, and they celebrate the Jameson happening just before raid. The Anglo-Boer War. The Jameson raid. And what happened was Paul Kruger, or the Kruger regime, found these people guilty of treason, which was living in Johannesburg. The Jewish, they were later called and referred to as the Rand Lords. Now, this people were found guilty of treason, but Kruger said he will not execute them. He sends them to Britain to be punished. Nevertheless, we need to look closely at what happened there, because this was explaining Rhodes's let's say drive to conquer this, and Rhodes, although he's a big enemy of the Boers, one should study him carefully, because he was one of the most brilliant people on the planet in terms of planning. You know, I've read the other night a letter which he sent to the Rothschild just before the Boer War, and stating he will leave his will or his assets to create a society based on the Jesuits' principles. Into the future, they will need to carry out his will after his death, and he has masterminded that, and he's actually have controlled South Africa out of the grave ever since. So if one study him, and that's where I get excited, because I see how my God used this brilliant people to run up against the Boers and just get a hiding out of this world, because the mistake they made is, before the Anglo-Boer War, the Boers considered themselves still a fairly close family to the Cape Afrikaners, which was quite liberal, and they considered each other family. And then came the Boer War, and when you tear something out of something else, there's obviously a bit of hurt and a bit of blood. But the Anglo-Boer War gave firstly our name, because before that you would read that Oaks referred to them as Afrikaners, and they referred to themselves as burgers. That it was most commonly the Oaks talked about themselves as burgers, burgers of the Republic. They never referred to themselves as Boers. But during the uprunning, very close before the war, we start seeing letters, and in that letters we seeing the word Boer. And during the war, the Russian Emperor Nicholas, Tsar Nicholas, wrote to the German Chancellor, and he referred to us as Boers, and he was answered, and the British, I think it's a Chancellor, it's a Kaiser, I don't know if my English translation is correct, but he wrote back and he talked about the Boers. And then right at the end of that war, the Netherlands, the Netherlands, what you call it, kingdom, wrote to the British and said to Queen Victoria, listen, we want to intervene, can we be a middleman in peace negotiations, etc. And they referred to as us as Boers. And the British replied and called us Boers. And that's actually where the word, the identity came as Boers. So a lot of people which wants to argue that we were Boers way back, it's not really right. It's not really factually correct. We actually became internationally recognized as Boers during that war. And identity is a very important thing if you negotiate with anybody. And before that war, we would have considered ourselves as part of the Afrikaans-speaking or the Dutch-speaking European descendants in the Cape. And the importance of this war was that the Cape Colony, if one look at the journals, you'll see that the British had, in the end of the war, a total of 450 to 470,000 soldiers, but they only brought here 250,000. So where's the others? And the others was the Cape Colony Afrikaans-speaking people who took up guns to come and fought the Boers in the Transvaal. And if one read up in the archives about when the actually peace negotiations began, the people in the Cape were not happy, because they said, listen, this war should still carry on, because we get such enormous amounts of money for our produce now that our economy will never be the same again. And if you look at that newspaper articles, you actually, your blood wants to boil to think this is Afrikaans-speaking people, or Dutch-speaking people, which is so money-orientated that people which have viewed themselves as actually family, their destiny is worth less than what you get for your produce, and that is where the true nature of each side gets reflected. The side of the money and the side of the freedom, and we're still there today. Now, if I can go past the Anglo-Boer War, because
before you do,
yes.
I never understood why the Boers didn't, complete the attack on Mafeking, where Baden-Powell was, and on Ladysmith. The siege of Ladysmith and the siege of Mafeking. Why didn't the Boers just go in? I mean, they could have quite easily taken those two big settlements, and that would have been a huge changer in the war. They basically at Ladysmith sat on Wagon Hill and just fired bullets randomly. It was just a crazy situation. Why didn't they go in?
Look, Scott, one thing we must say to each other, and I'm saying this to Boers, if they getting cross with me, I don't care, this is the truth. Yeah. We're the worst military people ever made by God. We pathetic. If you take any action under Boer flag, any war, any action, and you evaluate this you get a proper general or a guy which have studied a bit on strategic and warfare, you will look at it and say that this Oaks is crazy. They cannot fight, and we the worst soldiers you can have. So the question of what we did wrong to actually, I think the Boers didn't really plan. If I were in command, I would send a single guy to put a bullet through Rhodes's head, and it would have settled the war. It's instant. He could have gone down to Cape Town by train and won the war there. So the entire first part of the Anglo-Boer War have actually showed that we didn't have strategy. We didn't. I mean, if you take the Anglo-Boer War, very little people know it, but General Smuts was a British citizen. Okay.
Yeah.
He came very, very close to the after the Jameson raid. He came to and the law in Transvaal was that you needed to have a war to obtain. You needed to have participated in a war to have citizenship. So General Smuts was actually in fact a British citizen, and in the same time a general in the Boer War.
I have to just say another example of what you're talking about is the Battle of Speenkop. The British took that hill, and the Boers surrounded them and killed about 300 British in one day. And the Boers had won the hill, the Speenkop, and then they retreated. And the British retreated, and there was no one on top of Speenkop the night after the battle. It's quite incredible. And Denise Rates said in his book, because he was there, he said that the problem that the Boers had is they had these little commandos, and they weren't working together. They were like doing their own little thing, and you can't work that way in a battle.
This is unfortunately what we need to learn about ourselves. It will not change. It's today, nothing different. We have a scattered amount of organizations which is each working on their own, and I embrace it because where I come into Boer politics in modern history, I've learned very quickly that we sat at a table discussing at that stage. My view was still that we can have an armed struggle, and I only afterwards changed my mind. As a youngster, I wanted to shoot and kill and fight a battle, a war for our independence. But then we sat at the table and discussing these things and discuss how we will attack the government. That was still the Botha and after that the Clark government. And at the very same table, sit out of 10 people, 6 is actually government insurgents. And that's I have prayed so many times to thank God that I didn't end up in jail, because there was so much opportunity which they could have jailed me. But if I read up the entire Boeremag case, I've been hundreds of days in court and read up on the testimonies and stuff. That Oaks did nothing in comparison what we did in the early days of struggle, and luckily we got away with it. But we could have been jailed, and in those days you could have still been hanged for treason. So we as Boers still need to learn to fight. Luckily, if you read up on this history, you will see if we didn't have help from God, we would have been totally whacked out and dumped. If you look, for instance, one of the greatest battles we ever fought, and that's to me actually a greater accomplishment, and making more history in terms of global history, was the Slag van Kapayan, where 150 Boers on the back of horses have taken on the Matabeles under Potgieter, and for 11 days non-stop they've chased this Matabeles, and up to today the Matabeles is living in Bulawayo. They out of the country, and
right.
And the Boers have really fought that just off horseback in bushes.
Yeah.
And this Matabeles wasn't easy guys. They had oxes with sharpened horns, and they were good fighters. So that is a very, very great accomplishment in terms of military history for us Boers. But if you look at the strategies during the war, like you say, Spionkop, it's typically how our Boers is. We don't follow procedures, and we actually don't agree on it. You don't want to discuss it with other Boers because it's going to end up in a fight. But the point I'm making is that the Anglo-Boer War have established one very important thing, is to name us as Boers. Now,
right.
Because I view everything out of a biblical perspective, and my beliefs is, then I read the piece in the Bible which say onder die herderstaf deur, which say under the staff of the herder or the shepherd, and that states that if what is 10% will be holy to him, and you may never mix that back. And I say 10% of the people in the Cape have exited with the Great Track. Exactly 10% of the European white establishment in the Cape. Exactly 10% have gone. They made a pact with God, and they actually formed out of that pact, because before the Great Track, we had the voortrekkers, and that voortrekkers was just the track, the different tracks what we learn in school.
Yeah.
But after the incident of Blood River, it happens the Great Track, which was then thousands. So our history is basically based us as a separate entity as Boers. Have actually evolved from starting at Blood River and was concluded in the Anglo-Boer War, paid in blood. So every guy who call himself a Boer do that on the basis of those happenings. So we must always look back to it, but we need to see how what is our deficiencies now.
Yeah. Just before you do that, you mentioned Blood River. Now, December the 16th is the day of the vow. That day has been renamed by the ANC government to something, a day of reconciliation or something like that. What are your views on that?
Yeah, I like it. I like my enemies a lot. It's big fun to see how they try to manipulate things, and that they will never be able to do it. On the basis of the 16th of December, that is just a day we remember the vow. If you read that, and I see myself as one of the pioneers in establishing what the true wording is. In 1988, I wrote a letter to the Afrikaner. This was the newspaper of the HMP, and I said to them, the God I pray for will not accept a building built by hands. The Voortrekker monument, he will not accept that, because he's not a God of dead stones. He's a God of souls, and he would rather have a monument in your heart than a thing of stone. And after that, there was a guy which were called Skalk Jacobs. He's unfortunately have died a couple of years ago, but he was at the time an atheist, and he phoned me up and he crapped on me for this letter I wrote, and he said, there's no God, and you call yourself a Boer, but you need to have reality. And he started studying that to prove me wrong, and then he became a believer and one of the greatest people in our modern time. Document and research the vow, but that vow actually meant that we promised to become a house in a huis, which is translated also as a volk, to his honor, where it suits him. Now, in my belief that the 16th of December is just a day where we remind our kids that we must be a nation for God, and so they can call it whatever they want to, but what is of importance is they didn't take that off the table. So for some people, they can do what they want there, and I have a view, if you not truly want to be part of that nation, then don't do 16th of December. Just go have a braai on that day or something, but don't attach yourself into a agreement to become a nation for God, and you're not fully on it, then walk away and run away. And later on, I will stress this again, but my opinion for people is, if you don't consider yourself as part of this Boer nation, and part of the Blood River descendants, take your stuff and run. This is going to be this country is going to be very, very ugly. And we'll come later to that, but it's going to be extremely. So if you're not hardline, pack your bags and go look for somewhere in the world where people is more peaceful. Because if you have ever seen the full might of God, you're going to see it in this country. And my name Marius. I'm Hermanus Nicolaas. I'm called Marius for a different reason, and I've looked where Marius comes from, and I've studied Marius Gaius, which was the grandfather of Julius Caesar, Julius Caesar's grandfather's brother. But nevertheless, a very interesting man. But he was exiled from Rome, and it took him a number of years, and he made a good plan. And he went back and he slaughtered them, and 800 people in one day, in 2 hours. He have their heads chopped off and put it on stilts all around town to show what he's going to do with collaborators. And if you study that, you will see, we live in very, very a nice era in terms of human life on Earth. Imagine 800 people's heads on stilts, on spikes and stuff. It's unthinkable. I'm considered quite an aggressive person, but I will never even imagine to do something like that.
Can I just interrupt? I just want to say hi to General Isaac van Zyl, who's with us tonight. Isaac, I hope you're feeling better. Isaac had a couple of heart issues, and he says in the side chat, Marius is heeltemal reg dat die boere, veral die verregses, is nie soldate nie. Hulle is impulsief en veroorsaak groot gevaar met hulle impulsieve optrede.
Yes, look, me and Isak have our history. I like him a lot, but what we need to understand is that is exactly true. And a fight I have in my life with different people, which tends to make suggestions. Listen, let's get up for a war and this and that. I say be calm, because one thing I've learned is you can never ever make people free which doesn't want to be free. That's the most dangerous thing. If you look at the Boeremag, these oaks is good people. I know a lot of them personally very well, and I've struggled. I'm personally very much attached to what they have done, and we can call them stupid, and they did very stupid things, but they did it in the spirit of we want our people to be free. And I've sat with guys which at that time which wanted to talk me into the Boeremag, and I said to them, listen, you cannot make people free which doesn't want to be free. And I've stated that right from the beginning when the ANC took over. I said, relax, because our people at that time, just after the 94 elections, most people say, hey, listen, you right-wingers were crazy. Look how nice the economy is going, and this oaks is actually peaceful, and all of that. And I said that time is going to be the determinant factor. But we need to wait until our people reject this. And this is where Isak is right and wrong at the same time, because the government have for this financial year, they have 120 million rand allocated to right-wing politics and white right-wing politics. 120 million. If they give us 1 million of that, we actually show them value for their money. But they can fund hundreds of insurgents. But they don't get anywhere, because we're so scattered that they, if they send one oak to every organization, then they're out of manpower. So the fragmented way we are is a great saving. So yes. It's right, but that in the end days will also be because a thing about the Boers is we will take beatings, and we will take it, and then just one thing, a very tiny small thing will spark a national revolution, and the government can come. They welcome any day. They don't need to actually go and get a search warrant. They welcome me in my house to come and check if I have any illegal things. I don't get involved in talks where people is talking about violence and stuff, because I say when our Boers came up with our wagons, we negotiated with the black tribes, and each of these black tribes entered the agreement, and part of that agreement is that we must protect them from other black tribes. Now, we haven't discussed the black history, or if it sounds bad to say black history, let's say the black, the tribal history, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how to put it really nice, but I enjoy their history a lot. But these people were fighting amongst each other violently, and we protect them for many years that they don't attack each other. And I sit a lot, and you know, the way I fight this war is I actually talk to these leaders and I educate them a little bit on my way. But I look in people's eyes, and I call it I'll leave that subject, sorry. But I look at people and I see when I say something how that person react. Then without asking a question, I have to answer. So I look at those people and I talk to them, and then I see the hate in their eyes towards their own people, and that is growing. People don't understand the mass scale of uprising amongst the black community, because they remember just 2 years before de Klerk came about.
Yeah. Can we just get back to the historical side?
Yes.
Tell us about Sina van Rensburg's prophecies. What do you feel about them? Because he talks about a Boer republic at the end being formed, which will then be there forever.
Yes, look, the Bible also says so, and I also believe so. I'm not a great, let's call it, supporter of the sinner. I believe he's true. There's no problem in that. But what puzzles me about the people who's believing in or following his prophecies is they don't want to do anything, and they accept that it will happen that way, so they don't need to participate to make it happen, and that is what makes it a little bit negative, the prophecies. And people already live in Prishka. They say all our boers is going to go there, so they might as well go now. And they don't want to participate in anything, and it's the same as the people who support all sorts of secessions, argue these as, if I say to them, where will you get labor? They say, we'll go to all the hundreds of camps where white people is without work, and we'll go find them, and that will be our labor force. Then I look at them and I say, have you met some of these people? And most people ending up in that situation is there for a reason, and that reason different from person to person, but there's a deficiency, and I can write books about this. I've employed well over 1,000 of our own people, and you find that the person comes and he has a little plastic bag with his belongings in, and there is a definite deficiency in his social. His family doesn't want to help him because he might have lied to them or whatever, you know. But you crazy if you think you're gonna just get that people to start work. It's not gonna happen.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, the senior people is in the same thing, that they think one night you will be as we are now, suppressed, and the next morning you wake up and see van Rensburg's prophecies would have outplayed, and somebody else. It's always somebody else who will be involved in making it happen. And therefore, I challenge the senior people to actually do what he said, and he said, fight with your backs against the wall, but fight. And he also said, fight on a different way, and that is very, very important, because our people thinks about a fight in terms of guns, and I see my life as a continuous fight in this, and I actually participate. So in terms of Seer van Rensburg, yes, his things is true, and his prophecies is true, but there's a greater risk in clinging on to that than making things happen. And when I say making things happen, I've always said to guys which say, yeah, your plans doesn't work, your boers, you every second day have a different plan, and what I say, it's fine. I don't feel offended by it, but because the guy who has designed the light bulb have tried 100 times, he did it wrong. So he can tell you one way to do it, but he have tried 100 ways before. So if you don't start trying, you will never get to the thing. And the second thing is God's timing. You can do what you want. I've been in this battle all my life, and I don't feel bad about the hundreds of times we worked on things which doesn't produce anything, because as we are busy doing it, and it's time that God thinks, okay, this is the time when how I planned it, He will allow your things to happen. So yes, to answer it in short, I believe in Singer. I've read a number of people's books who interpret what he say, and there's a number of views I differ with them, because they all look at the man in a brown suit, and I see a number of guys which actually bought themselves some brown suits. But nevertheless, I enjoy them,
Yeah.
But I say to myself, this could have been when Eugene Blanche, he had a brown uniform. He came from the Western Transvaal. He basically was initiating a lot of the flame in our folk. So it could have been him. I don't know. There's a number of other things I see, which I see maybe it happened already, but I'm not living to look for what Seer predicted or
No.
prophesied.
Let's move on. Before we leave the Boer War, you have a descendant who was one of the last surviving members of the Bitterreinders. Perhaps you can tell us about that. And then from there, let's move into post-Anglo wartime, the forming of an artificial nation, the Afrikaner, forming of the Union and Republic of South Africa, and the formation of the original ANC. Let's sort of take it in that sequence. So start off with the Bitterreinders.
Yes. Okay. To tell you about my great-grandfather, this is absolutely, to me, one maybe should be more humble or whatever, but I'm extremely proud of this great-grandfather of mine, and he was one of the wisest men I've ever met, and I consider my participation in our fight due to coming from him. And he had a number of different views. He was actually family, very close family of Verwoerd himself. Betsy Verwoerd was Betsy Scoombie. So they were close related. Nevertheless, he had a different view, and it comes from the Boer War. And he always said, Marius, we need to re-establish the republics. And when I was a youngster, I delivered newspapers. Every day I made more money delivering newspapers than the teachers which lectured me. They actually borrowed money off me. but in that time, I delivered newspapers and I chatted to the old toppies which read these newspapers, and I see all the different views. And as I go with my bicycle from one to the other one, I was getting educated much more than any school can educate me by discussing today's news with everyone and see their views. And in all of that, I throw in what my great-grandfather have taught me, and I said to them, how about the republics? Why don't we go for that route? And all of them say, you won't be able to do it, Marius. What will you do with this? And they were thinking of all the problems. Why? I say, look, I don't dream. If I dream that I ride on a donkey, if you dream, allow yourself to have the best horse. So if you dream about an independent, sovereign state, dream the full dream. And if you in the contest to get there need to settle here a little bit for something smaller to make it evolving from there, then it's okay. But your dream must be to get there. So my great-grandfather, he fought the war as a lighty. You know, he was very young. I don't know exactly how old, but let's call it he entered the war somewhere about 16 or 17. Was already married by then, and he had his own farm and whatever. But he never went and gave up. You know, he told the story that when they were in the field, they sent Delaray. And he got a mandate from them, and they said, you can go negotiate, but you don't give up we're not going to surrender. We will be able to stop the war if we retain our republics. And then he came back from Pretoria, and he said to them, listen, we basically gave up already. Just let's go to Vereniging to talk about how we will give up. And they said, will the English settle for us keeping our republics? He said, unfortunately not. And they said, you were outside your mandate, you were a traitor. And they exited his commando. And my great-grandfather was one of those oaks who blatantly exited that commando. They never went to Vereniging. They never sworn allegiance to the Queen or the Crown or whatever. They just abandoned and went home. And to the day he died, he said, listen, this Oaks didn't have a mandate to go give up. And all the little political things which was in the play as he grew older, he built a number of dams in South Africa in like the Klipvoer Dam. He built that dam, and he carried on with his life, but he didn't want to participate in the current fight at the time. Was small politics. It wasn't about re-establishing the Boer Republic. So he said it doesn't matter what you vote for. There's no party which want to re-establish the republic. So he didn't take part. Till his dying day, he had a bit of a view on English-speaking people, and he didn't allow them to knock on the front door. If you were English-speaking, go knock at the back door, and things like that. Which in his life, one could say that was the bad points of him. But that he have a true mission, and he have very, very well transferred that over to me as a descendant from him, which will take the fight further. Now that is much for him, but out of my mother's side, the Rasa, where I bear the name from, this Dirk Herman from Solidarity is, as I understand, in possession of my great-grandfather's diary of the war.
Wow.
And he have recorded, this is Hermanus Nicolaas Ras, He recorded the days, and he was then captured, and he was taken to one of the islands. And one of the things most standing out in his diary is they were transported in what you call it, train wagons down to the Cape, and at some station they looked through the little openings in the wood panels, and they see there's a lot of people at the station, and he said to his mates, listen, here is our freedom. This people is gonna take over this couple of oaks on the train, and we'll be free. And then this people was actually there to spit through these openings onto them.
No.
And that is like a tattoo which you will never wash off, because that is what I earlier on said, how the Boer was separated from the Cape Afrikaner, because at that time there was a blatant hate, and that is unfortunate if we look at it, but it was necessary, and that is what further on, and that's where I come now, because what happens after that is, after this war, the Boers were devastated, but they were simple people. They don't want to hear about politics, and they believe God's will be there. And the clever guys actually came with another angle to this, and they positioned all Afrikaans-speaking people into one political thing, and they called that the Afrikaner. And there's big debates between the terminology of Boer and Afrikaner, but very little people know that the Volksraad in the ZR actually had arguments about it, and they found it necessary to actually make a Volksraad decision and make a proclamation about the word Afrikaner. They said an Afrikaner is a person of European descent which were born north of the Vaal River. And then there was arguments in the Volksraad, which you can go read up. And they argued and say, why not north of the Orange River? And one of this boers said, one of the Volksraad members, I cannot remember which one, said, but we cannot determine people's identity outside our boundaries. So leave it up to the Free Staters what they want to call themselves. But this Volksraad can only make a thing. So today people refer to themselves as Afrikaners, stating, but the Boers also said so. But one needs to take into account what they meant by using that word, and I don't see it that they meant anything else than what their Volksraad's decision about the matter were. And if we come now to the Afrikaner identity, then we need to acknowledge that only when somebody else acknowledges your identity, it's acknowledged. So if we look at the Afrikaner, then we see the guy called Jonker Afrikaner, and readers listeners can go search it up. He was a descendant of the first oak who committed a farm attack, and this what they called in those days hotnot, or you can call it a hottentot or a koi, or I'm not exactly sure what to call them, but this was people. They attacked this Kutsia family. And he ran away from the law, and he established himself later on in what we call today Namibia in Southwest Africa. I don't know what it was before, but he was the founder of
that was Jager Afrikaner.
Yes, and he entered into two different agreements, one with the Germans and one with the English, in the name of the Afrikaner folk. So he won the race of acceptance of the international acceptance of that identity. So So I view him as the let's call it Afrikaners. Okay, and now in the early days, people also referred to themselves as Afrikaners, meaning born in Africa. We're not more Europeans. We now Africans, and then they see themselves as Afrikaners.
Right.
So they didn't really get attached to it. But after the Anglo-Boer War, this card was played, because if you would talk about Boers, then there's a split, because Boers will not accept that they part of the Cape Dutch, but if they use the terminology Afrikaner, then they can combine those people, and they've went to great extent, and if you read Dr. Adrian Pont, which is I don't know how many people know him, but he made a statement that Harry Oppenheimer in the 1981 Jameson Raid Festival stated that Rhodes made a mistake to enforce the Anglo-Boer War. The later plan to amalgamate the Boers and the Cape Dutch would have been much more successful, and politically they would then be nullified, if one can say that. And if you read that, you actually get a view that this was supported by the money powers and everybody involved to actually support the ideology that we form part of a bigger group, and that's the Afrikaans-speaking European descendants called Afrikaners. And I meet people who talk to me and they say, but Marius, some of our culture is volksspelen. And I say, are you serious? Volksspelen was introduced here only in the 1950s to actually make a new culture. And this we need to. I don't personally hate the people in the Cape, but I outrightly don't associate myself with them. I'm a Boer and I will die a Boer, and that is how it is. I don't want to be anything else, but I don't want to fight too much about terminology. And this is one of the problems we're having now, is people want to fight about the terminology, not about the base of identity. And that
Marius,
grew to the...
I'm gonna throw a spanner in the works here, because a lot of my subscribers call me an Anglo-Boer.
Yeah, look, they maybe call me also Anglo-Boer because, I'm Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah.
By surname at least,
Yeah.
and people very quickly forget that one have a mother and a father, and they have a mother and a farmer. If I take it the 10 generations, which we enter now, as Boers, into the 10th generation from Blood River. Now, anybody who knows breeding would know that if you breed, let's say, vegetables, and you have a new species, you need to breed them 10 generations before you can call that a separate species. and here we are, Boers, 10 generations after, okay? But that's just on the side. I actually have derailed myself a bit, but in terms of the word Boer, it's honorable identity, and we don't need to fight with the people calling themselves Afrikaners if they see that Afrikaner in terms of what the Volksraad's besluit was over that term, but to use that term to actually make me part of the people in the Cape, then I say I'm actually I'm offended, but I nullify all the sacrifices my predecessors made to actually exit the Cape, and all the sacrifices which was made up to date, I nullify when I go back to where they have went away from. And one of the many things I differ in view with people is, I say I hate white people more than black people. If one must exit the words of hate, because my descendants exited Europe away from other white people to come to Africa. And again, out of the Cape Colony, my people went away from other white people. And then it was white people who have actually murdered our people in the concentration camps.
Yeah, that's shocking.
So if I look in political wise where I put myself as a Boer, I say to myself, I have much more powerful enemies than the black tribes in South Africa. I have serious enemies, and those serious enemies is actually white people. And the ANC didn't win a war in '94. Actually, in '94 is not on the table. In the '92 elections, it was white people who gave away the country, and that's why I tend to agree with a lot of black politicians which write everything back to apartheid. They say apartheid's a skuld. And my view on it is, if I take a chimpanzee and I put it in a bus, and I put my children in that bus, and the chimpanzee is the driver of the bus, who's the fool, the chimpanzee or me? So if you put your children and your descendants into a political dispensation where people which have proven themselves not to properly govern in a way our Westerners understand the governance, then you're a fool. So what I'm saying is, it was our white enemies which have, in a very peaceful manner, handed over our sovereign state over to Oaksu, and we'll come to that. Maybe we will run out of time tonight, but the ANC is not a pro-black party. They were bought out by money, and we operating a proxy political system where every politician is a bought proxy by somebody, and that somebody is
Marius,
pulling the string.
Let's get into that subject, because I think that's a very contentious, but it's a very interesting subject. The suggestion that the ANC has been bought by money. Before we talk about that, the South African Rand was named after the collaborators who were against the Boer republics. But most Afrikaners accepted it and were happy with that, even proud of it. Tell us about that, the background to the Rand, and then we'll go into the situation with the ANC.
If you talk to right-wingers in general, especially the older people, they have a fan or idol, which they called Verwoerd. And if you look at what Verwoerd actually did, is he made the Republic of South Africa. And then he introduced the Rand, the South African Rand, as a currency. And if you look at that, you will see the Rand is named after the Rand Lords, which this Rand Lords was the people who actually collaborated with the Jameson raid. They were the people who were found guilty of high treason. And after the war, the Queen gave them the status as Rand Lords. So, how can any Boer, really I cannot understand it. How was it possible in '61 that our previous generation was proud, we have our own currency? Nobody actually say this was our enemy, which we name our currency now, to our worst enemies, and in Verwoerd, in his speeches at the time, which is available, you can go read it up in the archives of the newspapers and stuff. You will see that the people actually was raving about this, and no politician said, "Hey, wait a minute! You cannot call it a rand after this landlords. You know, the collaborators who made it possible for a unified South Africa. And if you're a supporter of a unified South Africa, you are part of the Rhodes Milner idea of a unified South Africa. And now I want to just explain that the Republic of South Africa was just a scapegoat from the sorry, it wasn't a successful scapegoat because the fat lady haven't sang yet, but an attempt. Hello, are you still there?
Yeah, here, yeah.
I see I got a signal here that...
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I've lost myself for a moment.
Okay, now let's move on to the Oppenheimers and the Ruperts today. What sort of control do they have over the ANC government and parties like the EFF and the DA? And not only that, but who is behind that? You mentioned a fund that Cecil Rhodes had set up. How does that tie in with these ultra-wealthy families?
Yes, you see, Rhodes put up a fund, the Rhodes Fund, and you have left that to a family, the Rothschild family, to administrate this. And the first oak who was in control of that was Alfred Milner. And nothing in the beginning, there wasn't a lot of fireworks until Oppenheimer came along, the old man Oppenheimer, Ernest Oppenheimer, and he bought both the Boers shares and started up Anglo out of this capital. And you can access that. I have a knowledge about the number of companies in South Africa which have gained into that, and I'm only going to talk about two because the others I'm actually following how I don't want to give it up that I trace this, but never mind. The reason how you can get funding from this, if you committed to that goals and the goals of the fund. Wrote at two wheels, one world order, which a lot of people is in about, and if you look at the people like Henry Kissinger and a lot of other world or globally influential people have all studied on the Rhodes scholarship in various universities where they have the scholarship for intelligent people to go study, and then because they got funded, they enroll into a separate entity which operates like Freemasons and like Jesuits, but it's actually a separate thing. If you look at how Rhodes have actually set that up very finely and made very good instructions on how to compile this. But now the Oppenheimer family got this funding from there to start the empire, and I couldn't find in all the years of published statements from them that they ever have repaid a cent. But that's not really important. What is important is their financial power gives them political power. If you research it, you will find that in '94, at the time at the elections, the South African government have a total asset value of, I'm not too sure on the exact, it was $263.7 billion or something very close to that. And within one digit of a billion was the total estimated Oppenheimer asset base. So he was basically on par with the South African government, and he had his own money. I mean, if you go study the FinRand, which was the financial rand in the old republic, was basically you could have called it the Oppenheimer money. He had his own money there, but nevertheless, anybody who thinks in his mind that oak with that kind of wealth will not want to manage the country where his wealth is based up to first hand, let's call it grabbing the power. Now, if you in Johannesburg and you want to go visit a very interesting place, you go to the Grand Lodge. It's the address is 44 Main Street. It's right across the road from the from Anglo American's head office, and where all the Oppenheimers have been over the years have held their offices. Then you see they claim that the entire political playfield was negotiated around that bar, and they have pictures up on all the old what you call it, first ministers and prime ministers and presidents and stuff, which actually went there to smoke a cigar and have a beer with Oppenheimer and other role players. Then you see that we think the politics of the day is about black and white and copia but it's all immaterial, because they actually control. If you take a couple of years back, you'll see when I invite people to go check this, is a young Malema was still part of the ANC Youth League, and he made a statement that they should enter Botswana and talk to the people there to follow them. And hours later, it comes on the news that Oppenheimer threatened to totally withdraw from South Africa because of this statement. And within a day, disciplinary action was lodged against Malema, and he was kicked out of the ANC. Because the ANC is driven behind the scenes by Oppenheimer. And a very, very good book to read is Sammy Marks, The Uncrowned King of the Transvaal. And if you read that, how Sammy Marks have actually governed the Paul Kruger regime back before the Anglo-Boer War, then you get a very good idea how these things happen in modern day. Because if Oppenheimer just withhold, if there's a couple of ships which needs to exit the harbor, but he holds it back, then there's not a currency inflow into South Africa, and the rand devaluates immediately.
Can I just interrupt for a second there, because you mentioned Sammy Marks.
Yes.
During the Paul Kruger days, when they had the ZAR coinage, there was a tikkie, a threepenny piece. I think there were about a dozen of them that were actually struck in gold, and they were called the Sammy Marks tikkies. Incredibly valuable today, but that's the sort of power he had. He had the power to get the South African Mint to specially produce 12 gold threepenny pieces for him back in the 1890s. Sorry, back to you.
Yes, look, on that subject, people must know I'm quite well known for my statement that I see us Boers as moving towards our freedom when we pulled down the Paul Kruger statue. And people attack me for it, and I actually laugh about it in a way. But if we look at how Sammy Marks viewed it, he made the Kruger statute was made by him for £10,000, which you could have bought maybe 100,000 hectares in those days. But he has made that up. And he wanted it on Church Square in the center where it is today. On its arrival, it was first at Princess Park and later on at the Pretoria station. And then only when the National Party came into power, they gave him his wish and they moved it to Church Square. And if you look at that and the reasons why he did it, and we must understand our enemies is very sinister people. They have very fine ways to show power, and Sammy Marks wanted the Kruger statue on the place where the Boers is going for prayer. It was Church Square, because we as a nation went there to have Nagmaal. I don't know what you call Nagmaal.
That's Sunday night.
Yes, as Sunday, breaking the bread and the wine, But this was a very, very special place for us as a nation, because this was not. We get there together, and later stages we had the churches there, all the different churches. But then the people will go to church, but they will go to this was the heart of the Boer Republic. Was Church Square, and in the center of that heart, he placed his man, or the statute of his man, and he say, I make this statute for thanking Paul Kruger for his well doing towards the Jewish community. But it wasn't the Jewish community, and people must accept in our Boers, among our Boers, there's a lot of hate towards Jews in general, which is a little bit skewed up, because it's actually a very, very a subject which one need to discuss open-minded. But there was Jews who fought in the Anglo-Boer War, and they could not get shot. They were happy to give their lives for the independence of the republics, and we mustn't forget that. People talk as if all Jews is now enemies due to a number of Jews who did bad things, and those Jews is not even necessarily Jews. But never mind. What I want to say about Sammy Marks, people don't understand how a simple man like Paul Kruger walks into this office, and he's in the shade. He's the president, but he's in the shade of this wealth, and he's consumed by it. And then he takes advice from this guy, and whether or not Paul Kruger was crooked, at the early stages of his thing, he didn't know exactly how to do things, and he went to this very wealthy man, which offered assistance and say, do this and that, and listen, give me the monopoly, or what they called the monopoly in those days, were a concession. Give me a concession on this. And then I will do this. Very little people knows up to the 90s, the brickworks which he had, Vereniging Brickworks, supplied through a deal pre-1902, which Sammy Marks did this deal with Kruger to put this brickyard up. But then the government must buy their bricks from that. When the English conquered, the first night the British came into Pretoria, they came to Sammy Marks's house, and he said to them, listen, I will help you to conquer this Boers. I'm very well connected with them. But you need to first commit that you will honor the deals I made with the Boers, and the English actually agreed to it, and that's why for another 80 something years, all bricks by government buildings was bought from Vereniging Brickworks. All the red stone brick buildings of the railway and the army, and all the red brick buildings you see in this country comes from his brickyard. Long after his death, still from the Vereniging Brickworks, and the same is a family of him, which have owned a linen factory, which have supplied all the browns for the military in Southwest Africa, all our military uniforms, all the blankets on. If you look at that and you compare it to what is happening in modern day South Africa under black rule, you see it doesn't differ a lot. It is just changing faces, but the same problems is with people with lots of money buy themselves politicians, and they buy themselves on miles. I had partners in business which at election time, they call all the parties, they call the ANC, they say, come and have your check, and they give him a 50,000 rand check and say, don't forget, I support you. And he does the same with the DA and whoever he see might have an influence, and of the lesser parties, he gave a little snippet. And afterwards, he can call them and say, hey, listen, I want to put up a shopping center at that corner, but I have a difficulty in the municipality. Can you make a plan? And the next day it's approved. So that is a problem in our political makeup, and we can have a 3 to 5 hour discussion on how we will do this in future. And I'm nobody's leader, but I've extensively research how to not do the same mistakes again, because we should, as a nation, never ever allow those type of things to re-happen, that it's possible that we have a capitalist system called a democracy through proxy politicians.
Right.
And that is a problem we had in the National Party. We had the same. The ANC have that same problem, except they have a couple of problems in enforcing it, and that is a thing which Mr. Oppenheimer can actually take from me, is he will have his hands full.
Just before you go any further, I just want to address the side chat. Thanks, guys, for watching this live stream, and thanks for the moderators for the great work you're doing. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. We have fascinating discussions most nights at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time. So please remember to subscribe and hit the like button and become part of the Loving Life family. Now, getting back to you. Now, doesn't he look like Paul Kruger when he smokes his pipe? I mean, really.
People tend to say that, but I'm not the Kruger man.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
I'm not offended, but if people rather say that's a Sarah Sillier,
a Sarah Sillier, okay, a Sarah Sillier man.
Like that.
Talking about Oppenheimer and Rupert specifically now, and their influence on politics today, I've got to say that what I found extraordinary back in I think it was in the 1980s, early 1980s, that Anglo-American and De Beers were given special permission to move their shareholding out of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to Sweden. So they basically moved all their assets out of the country, even though they were still mining in South Africa. And why I find this extraordinary is because I left South Africa in 1986. And the most I could leave the country with a family and a young child when I came to Australia was $15,000. 600,000 rand. Now, that was under the National Party. Do you know anything about this when they moved all their shareholding out of the country?
Yes, look, that's a
because the rand collapsed. The rand collapsed to about 6 rand to the dollar about a day after that happened.
Yes, but it goes further than that, because we heard in the news and from all sources that there's some sanctions against South Africa due to their political stance at the time, and but certain companies were still operating. Nobody had an objection to take our gold, and De Beers was at the time the biggest monopoly on diamonds in the entire planet, and their works were not stopped. And then we look at the car manufacturers, Volkswagen, and you go check what companies. There was a guy which 4 years spent to try to determine the Oppenheimer family wealth base, and he couldn't get to the end of it, because they have shares in like Volkswagen, but that shares is held by a company, and that company might be registered in Sweden or Germany or whatever, and that company even belonged to another company. So to follow this is extremely difficult.
Right.
And I've tried it myself to just get a broad picture, and it's basically impossible. But the point I want to make is, you can see on all of those car manufacturers, which was not influenced by the sanctions, that they somehow relates back to the Oppenheimer family. And then one say, what was the sanctions about? Wasn't it about just protecting a certain family, that they don't get opposition? And if one look at that, then you say, but what did our politicians did in those days? And these acts were fraught. I will tell a little story, actually in another thing, because we're going to go away. But shortly, in a time of my life, I tried to kill P.W. Boer. As a little youngster in school, I tried to shoot him with a kitty, and I was caught by the police, and they questioned me, and he summons me to come and see him, and the police took me to him, and we sat, and he said, little boy, how is it possible that you want to kill me? And I could see this old man is in severe suffering, that the little boy wants to kill him. I said, I'm a Boer, and we're fighting a Boer war, and you holding our people captive, and you can take my head off, but I'm going to kill you. And I could see this man actually crumbling, and he said, boy, listen, I'm not your enemy, I'm a Boer. I come from Bethlehem in the Free State, and he started to talk to me, and he taught me a great deal about politics and how it works behind the scenes. And I said to him, Wim, how can you do this? You're a traitor. And he said, I have no option. And in a great way, he explained to me how he never signed up for proxy. P.W. Boer, even if I totally disagree with most of his things, and I'm no P.W. Boer advocate, but I have greatly admired his sincerity. And he said to me, boy, if you go into politics, I would support you in terms of I can teach you things. And I have a special place in my heart for him for that, because what he taught me firsthand as the president of a country, no university can teach you those things. And what I want to say is the influence the Oppenheimers had at that stage of our free republic was actually mind-boggling, that the president cannot do what he wants to do because half of his cabinet and close ally ministers is known to be in pockets of the proxies. Or let's put it, the proxy owners. So this guy had a life battle in his own parliament and that's why he established the BSB, the Burgerlike Samewerkingsbureau, was his brainchild to actually, because he knew by then that his own information head and the entire information, or what you call it, intelligence operations in South Africa is compromised. They actually report to another boss. And if a president of a country is in that position, and as a youngster, this shook the living hell out of me. But as he explained to me, it's not different from any other place in the world. Where you get a democracy and there's political parties, then it's a capitalist system with a proxy system. So what I'm saying is this Oppenheimer's, and if you look at Harry Oppenheimer's own wording, okay, I'm going to quote two people here. First, Harry Oppenheimer, in the Times magazine, I think it's July 1994 or July 1995, I'm not too sure, somebody can maybe Google it and get the exact date, but I asked him, what does he say about the ANC taking over South Africa, and his response was that, listen, if you bet on a winning horse, you would be not happy if that horse didn't win. I were their financial backbone for many years, and therefore, I'm happy that they took over power. If you look at that and you say, but this is the very same man which actually was one of the founders of the Progressive Party, then later on this Progressive Party have become the something else, and they end up being the DI. Then you say this oak was one of the proprietors there. You don't know how much money you support them with, but he plays it both ways, and this is very sad that it can happen, and the reason it can happen is still our deficiency in our makeup. Is that we don't want to be in politics. The standard boer wants to farm. That's his dream. If he cannot do that, he's working somewhere, but that still remains his dream. And he doesn't want to participate in politics. If you start talking to people and you say, this is the magnitude of our problems, and we need to, as a nation, we need to work on these problems. Then they say, listen, Marius, I have a life, and listen, please leave, because the rugby is just going to start now. And it's like putting a knife in me, because how can we not take responsibility for the people which is be after us? And I always say to people, listen, you a great leader, because the entire people which will be, which is descendants from you, is dependent on their future, on your actions now. And so you can easily say each one of us represent a couple of million of people which doesn't exist yet, but which will come out of our own blood. And I can barely understand that people don't take that seriously and say, listen, Marius, I want to see the rugby, or I don't have time for this. Yeah. And my entire life, I cannot understand this. That's one thing I say when bad things happen, and we're in a pretty bad situation at the moment, but I look at it and I say, this is the result of us not taking action and not participate in our own destiny.
Now, Marius.
And that's where these things, these proxy bosses,
Yeah, okay.
get their hands on our destiny.
Marius, we've talked a lot about the Oppenheimers and their influence over politics today. What about the Ruperts?
Yeah, you see, the one problem which Rhodes had in his dream is it will be very difficult for people like the Oppenheimers to actually tap into Boers. Because Boers is already crossed if you talk English to them. This little Lonely Planet booklets say if you're English speaking and you go north of Pretoria, you need to state that you're a foreigner, otherwise you might get a couple of shots just for speaking English in a bar. So us as Boers is very unforgiving towards the English language and English in general. So it wouldn't have been possible for them to tap into, let's call it the Afrikaner psyche, but by being English. So they needed to make the Rhodes dream work, get an Afrikaans angle on this as well. And this is where the Rupert family comes in, and I've seen the interview, or not the interview, the statements you made about Rupert when he pledged the billion rand, and $1 billion to these people is not money, but the point is that Rupert is as part of this new South Africa as Oppenheimer. And I laugh at both of them because they've planned this all wrong, because they don't see a couple of things. And I like it. I write letters to these people to mock them, to say you're stupid, and your plans is not going to work, etc. But Rupert himself, his father actually, was there's a conspiracy theory that he was actually involved in assisting Stafendas to actually get into Parliament. Now, that I'm not too sure what to make of it, but what I'm saying is, in politics, this family have been weaved in. If you take I would say the wealth which all of this, let me put it otherwise. I'm going to explain just how Oppenheimer sees it, but you will see that Rupert is doing the same. And that is, Oppenheimer has owned mines. Okay? Then he starts selling this predominantly to black owners, new owners. And his philosophy is, I don't necessarily want a mine. I have the mine to get access to the minerals. So what they do is they enter agreement between this mine and some company in another country, most probably in the city of London. And I encourage people to actually study what is the city of London. It's a separate state.
Yeah,
inside London, but people can study it, and they see how many mining houses from South Africa have their head offices in the city of London. But anyway, there's companies there which have a contract to buy these minerals for a period of 20 years or 30 years or whatever the deal is, and then it doesn't make it makes no difference who is the owner of this mining company, except that the responsibility, and if you look at the asbestos claims against the Anglo, which was in London, and that court the ruling is the biggest ruling against anybody for in the existence of the human. For damages paid towards people who got sick with this asbestos, and and if you look at that case, you see how I would do the same as Oppenheimer to say, okay, listen, I'm going to give the mining to somebody else. Okay, even if I give it away, I just want the minerals. And that is what is happening. We have a support of black empowerment in South Africa, pushed by these families just to take the responsibility over, but the actual profit is still they still make the same profit, and they make it outside the South African borders. And you can look how the mining industry works. It's a cost plus basis. So they have a contract with a mining group, and they say, we will pay you for this chrome at a cost plus 5 basis or a cost plus 10 basis. And that's the predetermined rate on what they export this chrome. And a number of years, when I actually looked at the chrome industry, I see what is happening is chrome is trading internationally at that time for almost 100 times the amount the chrome mine gets paid. So, and that's, people wonder how the British pound stay that strong. It's from the South African mines. Rupert's thing is a little bit different in the sense that he's not a big miner. He has other things. But like the cigarette industry, which is now on the table, and people think he owns only British tobacco, and I will be amazed if this alternative cigarette was not funded by him. People can just go look into the finer paperwork.
I want to ask you a question here. Marius? Okay, now, we know the Rothschilds have an office in Johannesburg, and we know that the past finance minister, I've forgotten what his name is, but he is now chairing the Rothschilds Foundation in Johannesburg. And apparently the roads fund that the Rothschilds actually manage has been a big backer behind the Ruperts. Am I correct in suggesting that? Because you got this tie-up between the Ruperts and the Oppenheimers and the Rothschilds, and they're all there in South Africa.
Yes, look, it's basically public knowledge that Anton Rupert started the cigarette empire based on a loan he made from the Rothschild. And that's how the public knows it, but it actually is from the Rhodes Fund, managed by or in custody of the Rothschild family. And if you look at the wines, there's a wine brand, Rupert and Rothschild.
It's called Rothschild.
Rothschild, and these oaks is very intermingled into different recipes of the same end goal, and this is if you look at the African Union, and you can go look it up, that Nicky Oppenheimer opened the after he resigned at the Anglo as the CEO, he stated he was called upon greater things. Now, if you manage an empire like that and you say, I'm going to go for greater things, I don't know what you involved with, maybe something really serious. But shortly thereafter, he opened he gave an opening speech at the African Union, and he stated there, my father founded this African Union. And then you say, oh, suddenly it makes sense, because this roads have a dream, Cape to Cairo under one flag. And the unification of Africa is right up the alley. And if you go scratch a little bit deeper, you see that Africa was decolonized after World War II based on Jan Smuts, who was what you call it, a secretary of roads, but he laid the foundation of the what you call this Verenigde Naties, the United Nations. I think it's clause 7. I'm not too sure, but anybody can look it up. Jannie Smits have laid the foundation on the basis that he said every nation on the planet have the right to govern themselves, and based on that, all the powers in Europe have given up their colonies based on that acceptance of that specific United Nations thing. Except they don't want to apply that to the Boers, but other than that, the entire Africa now, if you look at this, I had an interview, and I wished we had this technology to have had it on a recorded medium. But I had an interview with Alden Roberto. He was one of the Angolan warlords, and he was in Sandton on pension. And I went and met him. I'm a people person. I want to look a guy in the eye and see what is behind those eyes. What is his soul made up? And I went and met this oak, and he was a very docile oak, and we sit and we had a nice chat. And I said to him, but what was going in your mind when you murdered the people at Kasinga and slaughtering them? He said, yes, but listen, I got $5 million for it. I had no quarry with these people, but I was instructed by a guy, Donald Stockwell, and John Donald Stockwell, which was the CIA operative in Africa, and he wrote a very interesting book, which you can hardly find. I've borrowed mine for somebody, and I don't know who, and they don't return it. But he wrote this thing, Donald Stockwell, the Death Angel of Africa, how he explained as a CIA head in Africa how he negotiated with financial powers. He never mentioned the Oppenheimer family. But he do mention in his book meetings with Pitt Botha and a number of other South African politicians, and he described very finely with a lot of detail how he takes pride in have killed more than 5 million Africans in wars, which was instigated, and he's proud of it, that he instigated it. And nevertheless, this Alden Roberto said to me, but Donald Stockwell gave him $5 million to attack the Kasinga town, and then the first time he did it, he didn't do it properly, and he didn't do it as per agreement. He thought he needed to kill these people in this town, so he attacked the town at a time which was suitable to him. And there was no big international news about it. And Donald said to him, hey, listen, okay, I'll pay you for this, but I will pay you again, but do it at the day when I want it, because it's of great importance in that day because of this or that or whatever, a little sinister plan they attach this with. And they showed this to the world and say, listen, Africa don't want this colonies anymore, and through that, when I spoke to this guy, he said, listen, we could have agreed years before, but I was instructed not to go to peace negotiations because of the diamond trade, and they would rather give me a portion of the diamonds. And he was felt like he was done in by not being able to accumulate all this wealth, because then he paid with the diamonds again for goods, and he gets from the Russians or from whoever he gets things to fight with, and some financial support in terms of food and stuff for his soldiers. But so in the end, he saw no. This he always looked at this big bag of diamonds, and he said, "Now now I made money." But he never could take it. It was in a system, and he died a man which was not proud of his life, and he didn't have all the money he dreamed about. But the learning school in that is how Africa. He was actually a Congolese. He's not even a born Angolan, fighting a war in Angola for 20 years, all about somebody else's objectives. Now, if I look at that...
Can I just add to what you're talking about? And anyone watching this video, you can Google this and you'll see what I'm saying is correct. The United Nations building, for example, in New York, was actually built on land donated by the Rockefeller Foundation. They're very, very involved in the United Nations. The City of London, which Marius has talked about or referred to, that is run by the bankers, and it has its own police force. Can you believe it? It's not the London's police force. The City of London, run by the banks, has its own police force. As Marius said, it's a separate little state. It pays no taxes. And in Washington, D.C., that huge spear that you can see coming out at the back, that's also on about 50 acres of land, which is owned by the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds, and it's tax-free. It's a tiny little state within Washington, D.C. You look at Botswana. It's the only African country that's kind of, holding its own. It's run by the diamond mines, i.e. the Oppenheimers. It's got a proxy government in there, but they do nothing. Any comments about what I've just said, Marius?
Scott, listen, I need to run quickly to the loo. Can you just
I'll hold the fort. Yeah, you go to the loo and I'll hold the fort.
I'll be back just now.
Okay, no probs. Okay, guys, look, I'm going to post your questions in a couple of minutes. Bruce says the English, Afrikaners, Boers were all united in the SADF. Yep, and he also says, this is the best stream you have ever had. We need more like this because it can help unify us. Well, Bruce, what we're trying to do is discover, what is actually going on in South Africa. So, we'll continue to have live streams like this. Now, I've got a question from Bruce, from Richard, and David at this stage. So, if I've missed your questions, it's because I've been really listening carefully to what Marius has been saying. So, what we'll be doing next is putting your questions to Marius. So if you have any other questions, thank you, Erica, that's lovely. If you have any questions, please put them into the side chat now, and I will pose them to Marius. What a mengelmus. What's a mengelmus, Richard? Never heard of a mengelmus before. Is that a complete dog's breakfast or something, is it? All right. Now, you're back, Marius. Geez, that was quick.
Yes.
Did you run?
Yes. Yeah. No, look, what I want to say about this financial powers in the world.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people, and obviously everybody knows about these collaborators, but a problem which I see in our thinking is we think of these people as one, and it's not true, because one thing about this, the character of these people is they're greedy. They are driven on greed beyond our understanding of greed, and when you a greedy person like that, you're so greedy that you snare your own compatriots to get to the cake, and this have a couple of problems for them in terms of when they do things, and they. If you look at Milner wrote prior Anglo-Boer War, he wrote to Chamberlain, and he said that the solution to South Africa should be that we exterminate these Boers. And you know, if you take that in consideration, that he later was in the early days of the Rhodes Foundation or the Rhodes Fund thing, that was still his belief. And so what happened in the Anglo-Boer War was an attempt from Milner to actually exterminate us as a nation. And if you look at after that, the attempts because you can attack people by means of gunning them, or you can take away their identity, then they don't exist anymore. As a nation, they will be consumed within another group, and that is the attack which the Oppenheimers came with, is to attack us in our heads, and they funded the greatest attack on us is the attack which is basically self-inflicted, because of our population is currently, this is a number of years old, it might have changed slightly, but it was determined that for every white female in South Africa, there's 1.63 children born of her, which means that 20% of our population is declining per generation. And you can actually, I've made a calculation a number of years back, how long it will take for us to exterminate ourselves due to not replacing ourselves. And I listen to a lot of people who's crying and saying, listen, we under attack from black people, and they're killing our people, etc., etc. And I say, yeah, that is true. But let's put it into context that they have achieved to kill basically 1.1 something % of our population, whereby ourselves have killed 20%. You know, in terms of enemies, we our greatest enemy, and that is an ideological or a mind game thing which is run through the press, and that is where this mega money powers comes in, because they don't want to shoot you, they want you to die out or exterminate yourself, laughing about it. And they do this by trends. So they buy the media houses, or they don't even need to buy them. They basically advertise in them, and if the editor doesn't air their views, they take away their advertisements and say,
so
okay,
they
listen,
control the media and the narrative.
They control it, yes. So within that control, we see that in our recent history, we have declined in numbers dramatically, around about a third of if we talk about white people as a group in South Africa, then we say approximately a third have left the country, and that is the middle group, which is very important to keep the system going. So we left with the poorer crowd, the uneducated crowd, and the pensioners. The middle system is already depleted to a critical stage. But this war is the soft war, and the soft war is run through religion, and it's run through trends in the media, and all this lifestyle magazines, and you know, you talk to people and they say, Marius, I can only afford one child because I need to put this child through university and all. I say, why bother? You know, why have children? Because you leave that child with no hope in hell. He might be a doctor or whatever, but he won't be a Boer, because Boers won't exist based on your ideology, because that is a thing which was formed through the media, and people actually believe it, that we shouldn't be laborers. Come on. Do we really think we above that to do manual labor? But if everyone had 5 to 7 or 10 kids, then we had a labor force within ourselves, and we were not in a position where we cannot find folks, people to work for us.
Right.
And it's a growing problem. But what I'm saying is, and I say this specifically in the collaborators' war on us, it's a different war. And although they're funding, one must remember Zuma, for instance, has been trained in one of the camps which was set up by this very same Donald Stockwell. And if you take extracts from there, from what they have learned there, you see it's exactly the recipe of a farm attack. If you take that in consideration, you actually start to understand where this farm attacks is not a couple of oaks who go on a rampage. It's very finely planned military style exercises, and they don't steal. Their bosses is most probably mad at them for stealing stuff, because that can lead to the exposure of who's behind it if they can catch these oaks. So there's a number of wars against us, and I say to people, you must really look reality in the eye when you talk about if there's a war against us, because I hear too many people saying Marius, there's coming a war to us. I say, what? Are you not part of the war now, right now? We see the Angola war as a war. How many people died there? 3,000 soldiers over 20-year time. That's nothing in comparison with 50 or more thousand people died here violently at their houses, and our people don't see this as a war. Then what would make this a war? Does anybody need to tell you, listen, we declare war, or can we at some stage say to ourselves, listen, we at war? And I say to people, we at war. And I actually I don't want to incriminate myself, but I'm pretty well prepared. If a guy comes and have a attack on my house, if he disappear, because I choose, I know this is coming to my house. I don't know when, but I have all the time to actually put little things in place, because I know this oak is coming to my house. They're going to look where's the easiest to enter my property. So I leave them an easy place to enter, and etc. etc. What I'm saying is, every one of us needs firstly to look in the mirror and say, myself, luister, and talk to yourself and convince yourself you're at war. And when you accept that, you're at war, you think differently, and you start taking precautionary. When that guys come, they're on a suicide mission. How can anybody challenge you in your own house, where you have all the years preparing for this one day when he's going to attack you? You should take him out in a I-wing. And I'm just amazed that people don't see, firstly, we're at war. Nobody needs to declare it against us, although they say it from their platforms, but people don't want to listen to that. But the reality is, we have an advantage that they attack us in our own houses, where we can actually have the surprise factor turned around. Right. I actually want to say we need to talk about those things. It's a little bit a different scenario, but for the moment we must just firstly accept we're at war, And this war is firstly a violent war, but in a small scale. And it's an ideological, a mind war where they say to people, you need to feel sorry for this people because you have oppressed them. And I've sit with a black lady, which is now actually the owner or whatever of a political party, the Ahang. And at the time, I had huge disputes with I've closed the road over the farm. And just close it, and I say open it up again with a court order. And there was a bit of a dispute where I attacked some police officers and whatever, quite a big story. But in the end, I ended up with a meeting, and this I see her as quite a genuine person. She said to me, but listen, you have oppressed us. And I said to her, okay, listen, Refuwe, tell me about this. My ancestors come here with a ship, a compass, a watch, a woven clothes, everything. We find you here with a clay pot on your head, and now tell me just who disadvantaged you that there's this vast difference between us at that point in time. Who do you blame this on? And she sat there, she couldn't answer me. And another guy, which later on became a sidekick of Mr. Malema, he jumped up, his name's Adam, he jumped up in the meeting and he said, you are racist, you are racist. I said to him, listen, answer my question. And the question remains is, who have oppressed you that you didn't have your own language in a writable format at the time? The reason you can go study is because my ancestors actually uplifted you by giving your language, setting it in a writable format. And you telling me we have oppressed you. And if you take this argument further, the further you take it, the less substantial substance is in their arguments. But our people actually believe this. You sit with a guy and he's telling you, but Marius, we oppressed them. I say, who built the most schools in Africa? In South Africa, the apartheid government have built more than twice the schools of the entire rest of Africa, and you tell me we oppressed them. So that guilt is media inflicted, funded by the proxy owners to make people feel guilty. There's people which thinks. I've met a young guy recently which said to me, "Wim, if I were born black, I would have had a chance to make a living in this country." I said to him, "Boy, let me tell you something. I laugh at this ANC because I know something which they don't know, and that is they can make laws as many as they want. Half of them is asleep in that parliament, and they say, 'Do you agree to this law?' He's waking up and say, 'Yes, I agree to this law.' He doesn't even know what it is. He had a big party last night, lots of booze. You paid for it, no problem. But they make laws. They can make any law, but they cannot make a law which changes our character or make us stupid. And as long as they cannot do that by law, we still not stupid. So we can do things and get around these problems much easier than we think. And I encourage this, and I invite guys to come and sit and let's talk about. I don't want to talk about whether you interested in forming another little republic or whatever. I'm interested in how can we work together using our born characteristics as an advantage to overpower this situation where we're in, and outsmart our opponents, because we have the ability. For instance, if the farmers just for a month don't deliver anything to the markets,
that That is exactly what I think should happen. I think that the
that,
farmers, can I just interrupt, Marius? I think that the farmers, the commercial farmers, for a month should deliver nothing to the markets. Nothing. And see how the ANC scramble then. It's their food. They've actually, I think that would be a huge wake-up call for these idiots in the ANC. Now, I just want to say that we've got so many comments here which are saying this is such a fantastic stream. It's so fascinating listening to Marius talk. And Richard's just said, now, thank you, Marius, sê die volk wat oorag is. Now, what I want to do, because we've been going for 3 hours, is I want to post the questions that I've received from people so that you can answer them.
Sure.
Bruce has said, the English, Afrikaners, Boers were all united in the SADF. Please ask Marius why he thinks some people have abandoned that unity.
I can answer that. I don't think people have abandoned. I know people have abandoned it. I myself have abandoned it as number one, and that is when you combine things which artificially, then there's a law of science when either you apply enough force in terms of temperature or pressure or some force, external force onto this artificially concoction which you have made up, it will return to the original components. And this is what is happening with us right now. Is we have an enormous amount of pressure, and therefore the artificial made up South African, we referred to ourselves some years ago as white South Africans, and that is gone. We as Boers have exited that already, and I was part of a number of Boers sitting around a tree many years ago, and we decided we're gonna boost the identity of Boer. At that stage, there was nobody in a politics who referred to us as Boers, and I said back then it will take us 40 years to in my 300-year plan. It will take 40 years for this to be well established, and we 30 years down the line, and I'm not participating in pushing the Boer question anymore because there's 500 people doing it for me. I'm at stage 3 or 4 downstream, slowly introducing my ideology into people who actually does it for me. So to answer that question, if you fight with somebody in a war, it doesn't make it. It doesn't make you family. It doesn't make you. You know what establish a folk is a. If I have daughters and I choose who I freely would accommodate as to combine with my daughters to have an offspring which I will be happy with, and that is nothing else than a folk. It's a gene pool which is formed by people accepting everybody in this group to be a gene pool, and with limitations. So you don't have just nice people in every folk, but the principle is that to have an argument that we have a fight together and we laid next to each other, shooting a artificial enemy, and we are artificially combined group doesn't make us one folk, and people must understand when I say this is I have great respect for every nation. I think there's very little people who have spent in their lifetimes as much time as I did in Africa amongst Africans, and I enjoy this people's culture, and I enjoy other white people's culture. I embrace it that we different people. I don't want to and people must understand a big thing amongst Boers is they say no listen, your grandfather wasn't in the Boer War, you cannot be a Boer. Or listen, you got an English surname, who makes you a Boer? Or you English speaking, how can you try to be a Boer? But we need to go back to the Bible, open the Bible and read what it say. How do you become part of another folk? And that is like you ink a tree on another tree. You cut off the wortels, the roots. You cut it off. Okay, and that root, in terms of a folk, is your history and your culture and everything you have been grown from. You cut it off and you get entered onto another. And if an Italian becomes a Boer, but he still tells you, listen, we Italians, then this was not a successful ending, because he's still on his roots, but he's on a new tree. It cannot work. That's why I say to people, the thing which makes us Boers is two things which we need to tell each other is number one, we're looking for a freedom which we don't even know how it looks. Okay? And we've been looking for this freedom for hundreds of generations. Okay? And that comes a little bit into the religion, which I'm not going to elaborate on, but that's a fact. We are freedom, and that's why we exited Europe. That's why we exited the Cape, and that's why we sit together and we dream about freedom, and that makes you a Boer already. And that's the one thing. And the second thing is to make you a Boer, you need to accept that you're part of the vow at Britrivier. And even if I have friends which consider them Boers, which came in my time from Germany, and he asked me, Marius, can I be a Boer? I say, if you consider yourself a Boer and you fall within this, you will be a Boer. Because if you take where other people judge what is a Boer, and they say the oaks who fought in the Anglo Boer War, that makes you a Boer. I say, no. Because even De La Rey was born in the Cape Province. So he wasn't even born here. We must be careful where we draw the lines. And what I'm saying, and I'm saying this because the participant which comes from a view that we fought a war together, I'm saying you're welcome to be a Boer. Okay, and I'll welcome you, but we need to nip that root. Then you cannot forever. In future, you need to train your kids as if you were a Boer from the day one, because that's the root you accept.
Right.
And I don't know if I've answered that.
I think you have answered it spectacularly well, and people are loving your dialogue. Now look at this. Doesn't that look like? I'm not going to say Paul Kruger. I'm going to say Sarel. What's Sarel? Who?
So yeah, but listen.
Sarel Sillier. There you go.
It really doesn't matter. I'm not offended.
Now, I have a question here from Richard Kingsley. He says, please ask Marius what his take is on a way forward for conservative whites in South Africa.
Firstly, I want to talk to people about syndication. If we want to survive this, we have a big problem in terms of our elderly people sit with trillions of rands invested into investment houses, which spends that money against ourselves. Okay. Recently, they've built all this white elephants, which they call stadiums for the World Cup, with our elderly people's money. And due to laws being passed, they put other people, we can call it black people, in power in those financial houses, because these people need to apply law. So they need to have a certain content of black managers. And the next thing we're going to do, it's happening already. I'm actually on it, but I don't want to spill the beans yet. But the next thing we will see is how it comes out, how this money has been mismanaged, and not small money. I'm talking about serious billions, and we younger generation needs to go to those people and say, extract your money there and put it in a fund where we can fund our own people. A youngster which wants to come up with a business, he has no chance. But if we can supply him the capital, and then we can do this. And I'm not the right guy. You know, if a guy invests his money with me, he will definitely not have a tax problem because the money will be gone. I'm not a financial guy. But I accept that there's a lot of skill amongst our people which truly have magnificent ideas on how to form these things to get our youngsters, and I say to people, don't have a life vision to become somebody's employee. At a stage in my life, I had a number of doctorates which was working for me, and I look at them. We sat on the farm around the fire, and they were bragging about this one had 7 years on varsity, that one. I say, you know what, I feel sorry for you because you have studied to become somebody's employee. And we must change our look, our feel for life in terms of, I'm saying I cannot go to Europe. Everybody there is cleverer than me. Yeah, in Africa, I'm at least cleverer than statistics-wise, 1 out of 10. So it's easy for me to exploit this people to make money off them, and I got the advantage here. So in the same sense, all of us have that advantage, and we need to talk to each other and stop talking about things which is in over the mountain, behind the mountain. We far away from having our own republic or whatever. I don't have my manual here, but I've planned that for like 200 years from now. I'm on the page on how we can save our elderly people's money from being just squandered. And that is just one aspect. The other aspect is, I'm now involved in a little planting of 1 hectare's wheat, you know, and I've been a farmer in my life, and I know this stuff, and I'm quite irritated on how it's getting done, and I'm just overlooking this, but I'm enthusiastic about it, not because of what we're going to gain out of 1 hectare of wheat. I'm excited about it because we 6 guys together in this, and it cost us each a couple of rand, and we're going to eat for at least every family for 2 years. We can bake a bread every day out of that wheat, and in this time you can see I'm smoking. If you plant a tobacco plant today, over 2 years' time, you can smoke your own tobacco. So if you're dependent on other people to plant it for you, then you dependent on their promise or their control. When we work together and we say, I know at least 10 boers who is battling this battle to farm, because they might have 100 hectares and they have 100 sheep. They can up that maybe to 1,000 sheep, but they don't have the money. And now we can work together. And a guy who's working in town, he got a good job. He say, listen, every month I increase this by one sheep, and in the end of the day we stock this oak up to maximum capacity. And I can tell you, you can eat for less than a quarter of what you're spending on food now if you invest in that food's growing. I've little children, and I've let them plant some popcorn, and out of 8 popcorn pits they planted, they harvested, let's say, 2,000 popcorn pits. So even if they 7 years old, he can get an understanding of how little input it actually takes, and we need to gather around on meetings and have debates like this, a live debate, and say to ourselves, we need to live for this. We need to be enthusiastic, and we need to put dedication into it to get solutions where we can employ our own people. And in that regard, I've studied closely how Vladimir Putin have done it, and it's magnificent how he didn't increase just the income in Russia. He have decreased the cost of living dramatically, and that is what we need to look at. Our young generations, the first thing he asks if he look at the job is, he say, what will I earn? And I say, that's the wrong question. It might be in a certain way what you want to know, but that's you earn money to make a living. But if we comes together on a farm, and in the region I live, a hectare cost 11,000 rand. Okay, so if we divide a hectare of land which we bought for 11,000 rand, gives you 10,000 square meters at 11,000 rand. It's nothing. It's like 1 rand something per square meter. And I cut you 800 square meters out for your stand. It costs you 1,000 rand. That's just in theory. We still need to get sewage and water distribution, etc. But what I'm getting at is, what you need to do with an income is to make a living. And if you make your living on a cheap way, not people tends to think we're going to become Amish if we go to a farm and we settle there. We can have the best technology in the world there. If I dream big. I don't bullshit myself when I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming of, we built little Boer aeroplanes. We fund a couple of people together, and we put knowledge together, and we built a little aeroplane, which is a world technology advanced aeroplane with our youngsters. We can do it if we believe in ourselves and we work together towards getting our generation up. The generation below us is our responsibility to bring them up, and they will bring the next generation up. I, Marius, live for the advancement of my own offspring. The only reason why I chat to you guys is because my own offspring cannot breed with themselves. I want you to realize that I actually don't need to like you to need you to form a unit with my own offspring. And that principle everybody should apply to help with the next generation, and we can do it. We can do it even in the circumstances what we in at this moment.
Marius, I just want to say that you talked about the young generation. Look at Elon Musk, who's a South African, and he's sending through SpaceX. He's sending stuff up into space. This is a South African who's done this. Extraordinary. What a shame he didn't have a little Boer republic where he could have been doing this. It could have just really been a huge bonus for the state. Now, I have a couple more questions for you. Devin Hansen has asked, has Marius seen the series Greatest Story Never Told? If he has, what does he think about the content of that series?
Sorry, I'm going to disappoint you on this one. I've never owned a television in my life. People mock me when I ask them, is yours still playing rugby? They say, listen, Dad, yours is dead for a number of years. I have no knowledge of series, and I can tell you about Das when I was a little youngster. I've last watched television, so on that I have no knowledge of the existence of it.
Right. Now, Fran Key has asked, how does Trump fit into this? The U.S. president.
You're hitting me with heavy questions here, because I can only express my personal view on things like that, because I'm not too much knowledgeable on it. But when Trump made his debut and he started talking, I say to myself, the world powers get himself another horse here, because the Americans they were not interested in all the wars which their government have forced them into. And one thing you need when you want to go to war is you need patriotism. And liberals never fight. They cannot fight. They're softies. We just give them a couple of good slaps and it's over. In meetings, I call them out and I see the jellyfishes. They need a right winger and they need a patriot to be able to put a fight together. And I look at world events and I say to myself, although there's many powers is fighting amongst each other and things like that, they pretty much have it in control. And I view a guy like Donald Trump not necessarily as a friendly a party, and I don't view him as a solution to the Americans' let's say future, because there's a very big danger that he might be a role player to get the American people patriotic, because I view the American Air Force is the biggest Air Force in the world. The second biggest Air Force is the American Navy, and the third biggest Air Force is the American Army. These oaks have lost, when I checked it, about as much airplanes as the rest of the world. And the big money powers will not build this enormous war machine if they don't intend to use it. So if I were them, I would have placed a guy which will produce patriots, because then I have a fighting force. So if I view it out of how I would have done it, I would say, be careful to too much lean towards that side. And I want at this point to just say a lot of right-wingers and somebody have called it now conservatives and what, is looking towards the rest of the world to actually come and save us. And they're crying to us this. And I want to say to the rest of the world, listen, be good spectators. You're going to have one hell of a show here. We don't need your help. Just be spectators, because we are the tipping point in history. And I don't plan at any stage to bank anything on Donald Trump, or for that matter any one of the other leaders. If one look at Europe, you see how one after another a conservative government gets into place, and people get very excited about this, and I'm saying, listen, most people political views is coming out of the media, which is feeding them. So if you run the media, you can pretty much push a guy which you give media coverage, and through that you even though this is not your man, is not in your pocket, you boost him forward because you need him to get people to be patriots, because once they're patriots, you just need to offend them, then they jump for the guns, and this people needs to say to themselves, we all have Bibles, we know it's pretty much the end of time. Although I think 1,000 years back, I've read the article the other day, 1,000 years back, a guy said, listen, this is indications, and he had quite an argument that it's the end of time. So one needs to be careful with it. But what I'm saying is, in regards to Trump, I like a lot of things what he do, and I like patriotism, but there's some bells which rings which I don't like the sound of, and therefore, I wouldn't trust him as a savior of nobody.
Right. Now, I have to tell you, Marius, this channel has had about 160 live streams. And this has been the longest live stream this channel has ever had. And I have to tell you, there are about 250 people still watching, which shows that there's a tremendous amount of interest in what you're saying, and we'll definitely like to have you back again to talk about other areas of what's going on in South Africa, and perhaps after the lockdown we can talk about the lockdown, how it's impacted the Boers and other people in South Africa, and the way forward in South Africa post the lockdown. There's so many things we can talk about. I just want to say thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to you. Everybody says what you say makes a lot of sense. That's a common theme that I'm hearing from people watching. Now, to the moderators, guys, you've done a great job again. Thank you so much. The people looking after the side chat, posting the questions that people have put forward to me. Always like every time, just fantastic, guys. Well done. For those watching the video right now, thank you for being part of the live stream if you joined the side chat. And for those who just sat there and listened, I hope you've learned something about the Boer history and the Boer folk and their perception on things, because this is very important that we get this depth of perception on what's happening in South Africa. So to me, this has been a very, very, very important interview and live stream. So before I shut off, Marius, I'd like you to perhaps just say something to those watching this video now and perhaps later, just some thoughts that you might have, and then perhaps if you would, after you've done that, just close in prayer for the people of South Africa. Over to you.
Yes. No, well, I must say one thing about technology is we tend to think technology is bad, but imagine we had this on people traveling to come and attend a meeting where I would be the speaker, and what the cost implication would be, and how much a guy actually would take in a great meeting. And that is where we now, with technology which can work for us, and although it's pretty much in our enemy's hands, I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm a simple man. I'm hardly my own leader, and but I have a life of studying. And I have a crowd of 5 to 6 people at the time around my table, and we discuss these things. And I think my family is pretty much bored with my views, and they know all of my things by heart by now. So it was for me quite an opportunity to do this, and I very seldom get the chance to actually air my views. And remember, I don't claim that I'm correct. I'm open for. I've always had the view that I cannot lose a debate, because if I was wrong, I've learned something from that. So I'm very happy with people who disagree with me, and I tend to not go into details of things, because my thinking works on principles, and once you convince me that a principle how I view things is wrong, then I adjust that, because I'm advancing myself in adjusting. So I tend to like different views, and if my argument doesn't stand, it doesn't make me a worse person, and I don't have a following to I would say to defend what we're busy with, because I'm just a boer like any other boer, and that makes it that it was wonderful to chat to a number of people which I don't know. I don't see their faces. I'm sure the government budgeted 120 million rand to infiltrate us. There might be a number of them which can go sleep at night now. They know I'm not busy planning a war. But the most important thing is I want our people, each and every one, to remember where he comes from. We bred by people like the vet and each tracker, each voortrekker was magnificent people where we been bred. So we actually breeded over generations to be able to overcome the small problems. And we have people who view the ANC as our enemy need to know we have an enemy which is self-destructing. There haven't been in history an enemy against us which is so self-destructing as the ANC. So I see them as a passing by problem. I don't view them as a big problem, because they're busy extinguishing, exterminating themselves. So I want to talk to people which is deeply in their hearts, wants to create a better future for their own descendants, and where we can sit and look each other in the eye and say, I actually don't like you, but I need to work with you, and I'm prepared to look over the points I dislike in you, because we have a common goal, and that common goal is the unborn offspring which will come from both of us, and that is my closing statement. I honestly want to talk to people who have it in their view that their time on this planet is going out. But what they will leave here is material things which will disappear, and they will leave their genetics here and their offspring. And every one of us already love the people. If one of my children have a grandchild, I already love that child before his birth. And that's a natural thing, but we need to take responsibility for them, and we can only do that if we work together to create a future for them. And I accept that people want to entertain themselves with all sorts of other things, but if you don't love your own, then I cannot talk to you. And if you are consider yourself as a leader of people, and you have created a group, and your group has become more important than the reason why you have created this group, then we cannot talk, because you have own agendas which is in the way of my descendants to come and that makes you an enemy of me. So yeah, for that, I'm closing off that, and yes, I'm prepared to do a prayer. I'm not a guy who likes to pray in public, but if you allow me to pray in Afrikaans, then I will do a prayer.
Marius, before you do, there are quite a few people who are very interested in knowing what type of tobacco you're smoking in your pipe.
I don't know the species which was planted, but you can buy it from most agriculture. What you call it? People who make seedlings, go and buy yourself a number. It's a bit too late now, but I don't have enough. I'm a serious smoker, so I don't have enough to sell to anybody. A lot of people have asked me, listen, can we buy a little bit of your stock? And I think I have about 80 to 100 kilograms only, and I don't know how long these oaks is going to play games. So I'm tending not to want to help other people which have not taken the precautionary to put a little tobacco plant in their garden, and they grow it without any pesticides or anything. They snip off a leaf, you leave it for a year to cure, and after it's dry, and then you can cut it. It's quite a process, but if you enjoy smoking, and you know, my ancestry, just to go off the point, is our Hardings have been the first people to plant tobacco north of the Fall River, and so 150 years ago or something like that, we had the Orient Tobacco Corporation close to Magaliesburg, and the family have split up in the pro-Boer and the pro-English version of the family. And the English went to Rhodesia, where they were also the first planting of tobacco. So you know, tobacco is basically in the genes. But yeah, I'm a hard smoker, and I feel sorry for people who doesn't smoke. And this government have like with everything else, they stuff up. They has been disappointing to their own people, and a lot of our people, and we must understand this, is a lot of our people who wasn't joining the fight yet. This lockdown have given them time to rethink their future and to rethink life, and that's why I say everything which happens is in our favor, as we just need to see that. But this is just tobacco smoking.
Okay. Now, Marius, before you say the prayer to shut down the live stream, I just want to say thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom, and sharing with us what I could call the heart of a Boer. You know, I think that's been absolutely invaluable, and we'll be keeping this video as an archive on our channel, so that in years to come people can listen to the snapshot in time, which is so important in history. You were talking about why people don't record things that happened in the past. Well, this is recorded and will be recorded and archived and be there for years to come for people to have a look at. Now, with that, if I may just hand over to you for us to close in prayer.
Okay. Papi, dankie vir die geleentheid om met die boervolk en ander mense te kon praat. Dankie vir die hoeveelheid mense wat iets kon leer uit. Ons dankie dat u die beskikker is van ons toekoms. En elke boer wat sy verhouding met u verbeter en sien as as 'n oplossing vir sy probleme sal tot u waarheid kom. Ons dankie dat ons as 'n volk deur u gedra was oor eeue heen, dat u ons uitgekies het om boere te mag wees. En ons vra dat u ons sal help om die volk ter ere van u naam te word, waar dit u sal behaag. Ons ken nie die tyd nie, ons weet daardie tye is opgesluit, ons bied onsself aan om daardie te kan vermag. Sela. Dankie.
Amen. All right, thank you so much, Marius. That was great. Now, look, I'm just going to say to everybody who's watching, please, if you're watching Loving Life for the first time, please make sure that you subscribe and ring the bell and click all. That way you'll get all the updates. We have updates every single day. We have great live streams like we have had tonight. I think tonight has been just absolutely fabulous. For me as a historian, it's given me a tremendous insight into the Boer perspective, and I think that is invaluable. So I'm just going to say to everybody, please take care, stay safe, and we'll see you soon again.